allocated pursuant to the CARES Act to address coronavirus-related issues, including rent relief. And I believe Brian Ruiz is going to once again present on this.
Yes, thank you, Palmer. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Commissioners. For the record, Brian Ruiz, Community and Economic Development. I believe I've got Teresa Mayo logged in with me. Oh, and I see Annie Gibson too. So the experts are also on the call if any questions come up that I can't answer. Kevin, do you have the presentation that I sent you?
Yes, I'm going to load it up now. Get ready.
Yep, that's it. Okay, as Palmer said, this is a public hearing for the commission to consider and receive public input, if there is any, on a substantial amendment to the city's CDBG and home action plan. It's a one-year action plan and projected use of funds. We typically do this over the summer for the October 1 fiscal year beginning. Because of the funding that came through the CARES Act, there was actually $5 billion in the CARES Act for supplemental CDBG funding, of which $2 million has so far been awarded or allocated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Our allocation or share of that $2 billion is about $575,000. We'll get to that in just a minute. Next slide. So there you go, a special allocation, $575,310 in CDBG-CV. You can probably all guess what the CV stands for. Funding to be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. Our partners at Community Planning and Development, which is the office of HUD in Jacksonville that handles our programs in the state of Florida, were granted some increased flexibility with this supplemental funding, as well as a much shorter plan amendment process and an expedited public review and input timeline. Normally that's a 30-day public review and input period. For purposes of this supplemental funding, it was reduced to 5 days. Next slide. Okay, so you see two columns here. One is for CDBG-CV, that's the $575,000 we just talked about. The other is a separate column for CDBG. And the reason that is that we are additionally asking you to amend our current year plan to reallocate that $350,000 from our current owner-occupied rehabilitation activity to this emergency rent relief program, in addition to the allocations of the supplemental funding that you see in the column on the far right. That would be $375,000 roughly for the same rent relief program, an additional $75,000 for public services, $50,000 for foreclosure prevention, homeowner counseling, and then $75,000 for administration of the program by our staff. This has actually changed as of today. One of the public service agencies that we were working with to accept this funding ran into some snags, and as we did with our HUD partners. So that public services allocation of $75,000 or appropriation should be amended to reflect $50,000. So take 25 away from that. That 25 is going up into the emergency rent relief program to make the CV allocation $400,310. The totals Excellent. At the bottom remain the same. And then I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so though the rent relief program is not what you're voting on today, we know that you want to see details, and we are feverishly working them all out. So we wanted to give you a bit of a broad view of the program at present. There you see the funding sources. There's 350 from our current year CDBG allocation. That now is $400,310 in the CV supplemental CDBG funding, and there's an additional 180,000 in unencumbered or uncommitted SHIP funding for our current year, which also came from our rehab activities that the Florida Housing Finance Corporation has already approved the technical amendment to our local housing assistance plan, or LHAP. That's why you see the asterisk next to the SHIP line, that the commission actually is not required to take action to move that money to this program. But we wanted to give you a full view of the amount that we have for the effort, which now with 25 more is $930,310. So when we start talking about the rent relief program, obviously, because these dollars are all allocated to the city by our state and federal partners, they are limited in use to within our corporate boundaries. We cannot use them for residents of unincorporated Polk County or anywhere outside of Lakeland. In this case, for this particular emergency program, the resident will need to be delinquent on their rent and or their public utilities, public meaning water, sewer, electricity, solid waste. They will need, and this was an important one, they will need a verifiable loss of income related to the impacts of the pandemic crisis. And that will come in the form of unemployment compensation, either application or approval, documentation from their current or prior employer that their income has been reduced either by furlough or layoff. In other words, we are targeting this funding to those who have been impacted by the virus, not or the economic impacts of the virus, as opposed to strictly low-income households. Although the applicants will need to be low income, and that's the next bullet, that the applicant households to be eligible will need to be at or below 80% of the area median income adjusted for family size, which today is $47,050 for a family of four. If a family of four makes that or less, they would qualify for this program on the income at least. And then there you see the maximum award that we have proposed, and this is identical to the county's program in that it is a maximum of 3 months or $5,000, whichever occurs first. Next slide. Okay, so where do we go from here? Assuming the commission approves the substantial amendment to the action plan this afternoon, we will begin promoting this program for a launch next Monday morning. We have been working with our IT staff for probably about 3 weeks now to build a very simple yet very complicated for them application program that can be accomplished online, that we prefer only be accomplished online. It works a lot like TurboTax. Anyone who's ever filed a tax return using TurboTax, you click this button to begin, and it walks you tab by tab, step by step through every member of the household, income, employment, assets, signatures, attachments for those things that need to be documented that I mentioned, and then finally a submittal that will complete their transaction and put them in line. As soon as we start receiving those applications, we will begin screening them immediately. And it will be first come, first ready, first served. So the more complete the application and the documentation required to accompany it, the more quickly someone will be ready and then served. The county, about just over 2 weeks ago, announced a similar rent program and directed interested applicants to the Homeless Coalition via the Homeless Coalition's phone number. And as of last week, they had received 14,000 phone calls. So that bullet at the bottom about extreme demand is what we are preparing for, recognizing that even the simplest of online applications and well thought out programs, which we hope this one is is still going to elicit a very high call volume. And for that reason, we are preparing to staff our housing office back up and very likely augment it with some others from our department that we can train quickly to handle a large influx of calls, at least at the beginning of the launch of this program. The phone number isn't working yet, but when it is, starting Monday, it will be 834-CARE, C-A-R-E.
Nice.
I can't take credit for it. And I think the next slide is questions, and I will basically open it up to you all at this point. We tried to keep it as short as possible.
Excellent and a thorough presentation, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ruiz, what is the definition of delinquent? Is delinquent by definition 1 month behind your rent, 2 months, 30 days, 40, 60 days? What is delinquent?
Yeah, we haven't defined it, and no one on the staff has asked as of yet. I know the Homeless Coalition in the county said they were receiving calls last week for rent that is due May the 1st, meaning it's not delinquent yet. So they were advising those tenants in that predicament to call back after May the 1st when they were delinquent. So I would think either 1 day or 5 days past due would be enough for this program. We're not trying to make it overly onerous. We've gotten bogged down at times in the magic dates of the pandemic crisis and those impacts, realizing or recognizing that some businesses, because of the nature of their business, whether the governor's order maybe followed some of the things that they did. We know that the restaurant and bar industry was impacted before the governor issued an executive order that everyone stay at home or be safer at home. So potentially people could have been furloughed or laid off back in very early March, probably late February or early March, when the very beginnings of this crisis in Florida. So we're much more focused on the documentation as opposed to the timing, but still recognizing that our partners in Jacksonville and in Tallahassee and Washington are going to send monitors at some point to look at how we have spent this money, and we have to be fully prepared to show them that we dotted every I and crossed every T where eligibility was concerned. Some things those partners dictate to us. That 80% income threshold is an absolute. We cannot exceed it. There are other things like the question you're asking where we do have some flexibility, but I think we're trying to be as consistent and simple as possible.
Good question. Any other questions? We would entertain a motion here for the Commissioner McCarley.
Hey, Brian, on the SHIP funds, those are approved, and are they in hand, or are we still waiting on anything from the state level? We already have those?
Annie, can you unmute? We get them quarterly. So we may have gotten our fourth quarter. I'm not sure. Their fiscal year ends in June, so we're
in
the fourth quarter now.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes,
I was just wondering if they're pending. Okay.
It's 18-19 funds, so those have been allocated already.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks, Brian.
Commissioner Reed.
Brad, what's the penalty if we catch them of fraudulently filling these out?
I'd have to go and look at the application. It's technically fraud. I'm sure an extremely willful case we would turn over to our friends at the police department and have them investigate that somebody, knowingly and willfully applied for this assistance. There may be some, but maybe I can bring you a bit of comfort. On the back end of the application, this isn't something that happens at the initial application, but between the tenant applying and us sort of fully verifying and certifying them, there will be a landlord certification process where that landlord will have to certify to us a number of things. One, that family is indeed their tenant, but also that they're not receiving any other assistance. It's not Section 8 subsidized. They're not relatives. We're trying to limit the opportunity for that kind of deception, but in the extreme, I'm sure that it is fraud submitting an application for federal and state housing assistance.
So one of your staff members will be vetting this thoroughly, I presume.
Yes, sir. We get documentation of their income, their bank statements, like I said, unemployment, their employer information. They do this for all of our other programs. So that part is actually pretty well in their wheelhouse. It's the administration of a rental program and cutting checks directly to landlords that's outside our comfort zone. But we, over the last 2 to 3 weeks, have pushed, and Annie and Teresa probably back me up on that I've pushed to get this pushed together.
Excellent question. Commissioner McLeod, and we actually need a motion to consider this amendment, which would make this discussion probably more appropriate if we had one.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so there's a motion from Commissioner McLeod and a second from Commissioner Walker. And Commissioner McLeod, your comment.
Brian, you mentioned the anticipated demand and the efforts to get the online application ready by Monday. Is there anything that concerns you at this point about being ready for that, or anything that keeps you up at night about just the process side of it and being ready to handle everything?
Nothing that is keeping me up at night. I would say that we all are very focused on the unknown. I don't know what the volume is going to look like. I have been today working with telecommunications and working with Nicole and others on our team, trying to figure out to what level we need to staff up with existing staff. We're not hiring new people, but repurposing for probably a short period of time folks that this isn't their normal job, but we're going to get them trained up to be able to handle these calls. Do we need 5 extra hands? Do we need 10 extra hands? I simply don't know until the phone lines are up and running Monday morning and the application is available. And that's an important point, is we have structured this to minimize the need for phone calls. The phone call, we're not going to turn anybody away, and we'll answer the call and we'll help them and we'll explain it to them. But until they click submit at the end of that application, they are not in line. And with the funding, even with the additional 25,000 added today, we're still only up to approximately 186 families that we can help with this money. That's assuming each one maxed out at 5,000. That may not prove to be true. So we would be able to assist more if it's not. But between 185 and 200 families is probably about what we can expect. If the county's gotten 14,000 calls already, a lot of those are outside our city, but some of them are from inside our city. And so we just don't know how far this is going to go, how quickly it's going to be sort of spoken for as we work through those applications. So I guess the biggest concern I have is just how we're going to go from 10 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour between Friday and Monday.
Annie, would you have any additional concerns to that same question?
No, sir. I guess it's just a matter of the number of calls, number of applications we're going to receive, and the lack of funding we're going to have at the end of the process.
Okay. Any other questions by commissioners? Any other questions by the audience? All right, hearing none.
Hang on, Mr. Mayor. We do have a caller, and
I'd be happy to delay, sorry.
Caller, you're on the line, and you're available to speak before the commission on this agenda item. They could just be listening, Mr. Mayor, but they got on after the meeting started, so I couldn't identify.
Much rather check. So what we want to do in this is do a hand vote. All those in favor of this amendment, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Russ. I appreciate that getting done and for the presentation. That takes us to the city manager portion of our meeting and the COVID-19 emergency manager update.
I believe we have Audrey, our new best friend, on the line. And Audrey, why don't you go ahead? And as far as city manager update, just real quickly before Audrey gets started, obviously you've been getting our daily updates, been kind of keeping you abreast of everything that we're doing here within the city. Those of you who might have been in our emergency operations center call earlier today probably heard that the county is looking at doing some passive openings by May 1st. And what I mean by passive openings, those are primarily in the parks and recreation area. However, they are also with all the city managers. We've been on a number of calls starting Friday over the weekend, working on some cohesive options to start taking a look at bringing staff back into the fold, re-engaging them in our divisions, and looking down the line, whether it be mid-May or end of May, we're trying to establish some facility openings too. But that's still in the works. Everybody's waiting on the governor's rendering. Hopefully we get that soon about what the next plans are coming out of the task force. But until we get that, it's kind of hard to go ahead and make some quick moves. So with that, Audrey, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, this is Audrey Kane, Emergency Manager for the City of Lakeland. I want to go ahead and just give you a quick update on a few things. So locally, the number of positive COVID cases for our surrounding counties, starting with Hillsborough County, is at 1,190. Manatee at 533. Osceola County currently has 470 cases. And Orange County has 1,402. Sumter County is at 173. And Pasco County is at 237, and Polk County today, as of this morning, is at 441. Many of the surrounding counties have seen a decrease in the number of positive cases daily, speaking to colleagues around the surrounding central areas. As for our PPE, for some reason, I moved too far. There we go, sorry. When it comes to our PPE here in Lakeland, currently our personal protective equipment supplies are stable as we continue to receive some of those supplies from the state, as well as acquired through the City of Lakeland warehouse. For our Region 4, I spoke with Paul Siddall, who is our Region 4 Department Coordinator from Emergency Management. He stated that we will start seeing more testing in the rural areas as they set up testing at CVS's and local stores and parking areas, but they want to get away from the larger cities and bring that testing to the rural areas for the residents that are unable to travel. The most latest executive order signed by the governor was Executive Order 20-104, wherein the governor suspended the biweekly reporting requirements of claimants of actively seeking work requirement only to the extent needed. This is when they're filing for their unemployment benefits. This suspension is on an emergency temporary basis only and as needed to respond to COVID-19. As we go on to our recovery planning, we are still having weekly calls with our community partners and emergency management with Polk County and talking about the food distribution centers throughout the county. They are starting to receive more meals from the state, meals ready to eat, and are actually getting some donations into the area for those families. For the Florida SNAP program, which is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, residents that actually get the SNAP program are able to start purchasing their food online using their EBT card and pick their food up. They're even able to order their food from Amazon and have it delivered to their house. This is actually really good as it reduces the shopping risk from COVID-19 and helps fulfill the consumer's demand and keeps Florida-grown products moving to the families. With the USDA and Florida, the Food and Nutrition Services has a new program called the Pandemic EBT Program. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is collaborating with the Department of Children and Family Services to implement the Pandemic EBT Program, which will allow families whose children were in school that were eligible for either free or reduced price lunches to receive those SNAP benefits as well. So currently, 6 states have been approved for this new program, and we're just waiting to hear whether or not Florida has been approved. One of the other things that we have to think about with this COVID, with as long as it's gone on in the weeks, is your health, is your mental health as well. So speaking with the Florida Department of Health this morning and a couple of other doctors at the clinic, I asked them some questions of what would be best for everyone's mental health, and I'll get a quick snapshot picture. One of the main things that they brought up was taking a break from the pandemic, which means stop listening or reading or looking at your social media, anything that has to do with the pandemic. Just take a complete mental break from it as much as you can. Take care of your body, take deep breaths, stretch, and meditate. That is the other second best thing that they told me today, as well as try to eat healthy, well-balanced meals, exercise daily, and get plenty of sleep, as well as connect with others. Don't forget to connect with your family and your friends through other video or your social media, or just giving them a phone call. And then take time to unwind. Try to do something different that's not an activity that has anything to do with the COVID-19. As you can see on this slide, again, this is the daily graphs from Polk County and the state of Florida. As you can see on the left with Polk County, you can see we had a considerable rise today, and Dr. Jackson explained that could possibly be from the testing that they're doing in the nursing homes and the long-term care facilities. When I spoke with Paul Siddall today, he says they are ramping up doing the testing in those long-term care facilities. So that's why you're probably seeing the spike in the increase of numbers. Have not heard yet from Dr. Jackson's office whether or not these numbers are because of that, or that they just saw more testing over the weekend and last week. The state of Florida, as you can see by their graph, on the bottom, their daily graph, you continuously see spikes up and spikes down, and slowly those numbers are coming down as well. And that is all I have for my presentation today. Thank you.
Commissioner McCarley.
Hey, Audrey, on the SNAP program, online shopping, do they see that as a change that they're going to make permanently to allow those families to do that online? Do you know? Have they mentioned that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
On the SNAP benefits, and they're letting those families buy online, order online, do you think that'll be a permanent change, or do you think it's just strictly for the pandemic?
It's strictly for the pandemic.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions by commissioners? Commissioner Franklin.
Thank you, Mayor. Audrey, question for you. This data may exist out there somewhere, and maybe I just haven't seen it, but as we continue to do more testing, whether it's nursing homes or just out in the community at large, considering how many people have previously had it and weren't aware of it, I mean, it just seems kind of natural that the numbers are going to continue to be there. But is there anywhere that we can show any numbers you're seeing that show a percentage, either increase or decrease of positives each day? Because to me, that seems to be really a more relevant number than just the number of absolute cases.
Yeah, the Florida Department of Health's daily report has normally that comes out about 6 hours after they've given us the daily numbers. So if you would like the percentage rates, that would actually be included in the evening report that I sent out.
Okay.
The 4 to 12% is where we flux in that
Correct.
range typically.
Of positives.
Of positives. Of what's checked. So we were running a little for this. The one on yesterday took us up to 12%, which is the high end of it. 64 cases in Lakeland, and 1/2 of our 18 deaths have been in long-term care centers.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? And so some of the concern we've had on this, Audrey, is that naturally, if we're testing people who are suspect that they may have the virus, that those numbers do nothing but continue to rise in aggregate, so that we have, as we think about, and as the governor's task force is working on this, and as the county looks at this, we have to think about some other criterion kind of beyond that, watching deaths or watching the trend in some of those cases. Any thoughts on your part with respect to that at all?
Well, it would be nice to be able to start seeing some recovery numbers, and but those aren't shared very, openly, as well as, any of the patients that, were asymptomatic and may have already had it previously that are helping out. We are not getting those numbers. Every day I ask those questions to FDOH to see what they have. And as soon as I get those, I can share those with you.
Okay. Thank you, by the way, for all the work you're doing in this.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much, Audrey. And if there are none, we will move on to the next item, which is our presentation from community stakeholders in the area businesses. I asked City Manager Delgado if I could make an opening statement, which I spent a little bit of time doing. And in doing this, I am making some, what's the word I want to say? Some assumptions that I think that we as a commission kind of feel. And so you can clarify any of those if I have not spoken kind of out on our heart, but I've kind of threaded together a statement, and I'd like to read it. I prepared an opening statement for this afternoon's meeting with the hope of providing clarifying information which may dispel some unfounded assumptions. My goal in doing this is to lessen the focus on unnecessary dialogue and allow us to focus on the best methods for getting back on our feet together. We're all sharing a life-changing event that has drastically impacted the way we live on many fronts. Although we are all affected by COVID-19, we are not all equally impacted. You must know your commission recognizes this, and it is our sincere desire to listen well as we work toward a deliberate path to normalcy. We have been in this process just a little over a month. It seems much longer, but it is not. And the initial focus required a strong health understanding and aggressive actions above everything else. This health focus has been real for us, for our county, our state, our nation, and our world. America will soon have experienced as many deaths in 4 months from COVID-19 as were lost during the entire Vietnam War over 10 years. This virus is no little matter. It is lethal. Hence, initiating social distancing and other related quarantine decisions required drastic steps of integration. The nimble skills of many organizations have expertly adapted as they have made hundreds of transitions while also becoming Zoom and GoToMeeting specialists. Many changes, however, have limited physical freedoms and restrict our ability to engage in commerce as in the past. We are aware. We are still receiving massive emails from people who wish to continue the present course and hope the Commission will not consider reopening anything in the near-term future. It remains a time to listen to all concerns. As you know, because of sunshine requirements, we are limited to discussion with one another, except for times we are together in the public sector. Therefore, you've been able to witness our thinking and recommendations all along the way. There is no desire on this Commission to unnecessarily limit any business enterprise or physical access to public spaces any longer than is deemed necessary for safety. Quite to the contrary, we eagerly seek solutions and safe phases of reopenings. We will focus today's meeting on reopening business because this entire commission agreed wholeheartedly with Commissioner Madden's recommendation to hear from the business community as soon as she made it. The reason for that is the combined enthusiasm the commission shares and we desire to discover how best and creatively those phased integrations can occur. Please know this is our motivation. We want to hear your creative ideas and near-term desires. We will review the results from last week's survey. We want to be attentive to difficult struggles from local businesses. We have been listening to and reading many of them during the past weeks. Some of them are heart-wrenching. That is what our commission wants to do today, and it is the purpose of this meeting. As Benjamin Vickers, the owner of Honeycomb Bread Makers, was quoted in today's ledger, you adapt or perish. We are choosing to adapt as wisely and quickly as possible. Lakeland will continue to be a beautiful, thriving place to live. So before we begin, I want to provide 5 cautions to maximize the value of these discussions, and then we'll start. Here they are. Number 1, today's discussions are not an either-or focus. We cannot talk about health needs at the expense of business concerns, and we cannot speak about business concerns at the cost of health needs. The solutions and phased integrations we all seek must be quantified by the continued success to decrease the virus. Number 2, however, this meeting is solely about business needs and economic concerns. So although I provided the caution in number 1, I request our comments during this meeting do not focus on health needs or the debatable health-related views or the most valid healthcare measurements. Park reopenings are high on our list. The state and county, alongside our dedicated healthcare providers, will determine the most valid criterion to measure for reflecting success in the COVID-19 battle. So my second precaution is this. It's to request that we stay focused on business needs only in this meeting's discussion. You have the freedom to know that from our perspective, focusing on business needs only does not mean you are heartless or you do not care about the COVID-19 healthcare demands upon others. We must all learn how to restore life's commerce rhythms, considering both. Number 3, we have all just witnessed the most substantial dollars of SBA support distributed in the shortest amount of time in America's history. These funds have been or are being released, providing identifiable, qualified, interim financing needs to many companies for which we are grateful. We also recognize not all of our small businesses received those funds. Whereas there are funds at both federal and state levels, my third caution is not to look to the city of Lakeland for additional funds or financial remedies beyond already existing programs and their current definitions. The city of Lakeland has already incurred millions of dollars of lost revenue, and the commission chose to lower energy costs to citizens and companies anyway, as well as extending leniency in their collection. The commission's foremost fiscal responsibility must be to sustain the quality of life as effectively as possible throughout the next fiscal year. During that time, we will evaluate how to protect taxpayers' dollars as we all get back on our feet economically. Therefore, if a local fund to aid small business needs and overcome hardships is created, those monies must come from outside the city of Lakeland itself. If companies or individuals desire to create that fund, the city of Lakeland could administer it, but still our commission requires a decision to provide that administrative support if others request the city of Lakeland to do so. Number 4, as a commission, please be aware we are not fighting reopening. We are seeking its appropriate timing. We will likely synchronize reopening phases with federal, state, and county policies and adopt their recommended schedules. We do not wish to be any more restrictive or any less protective than those governmental entity partners. We appreciate the cooperation we share with the Polk County Commission, Polk County city managers, and it is careful examination of next steps planning which will conform to CDC guidelines. Number 5, and the final caution, is to recognize as we reopen, life will not be business as usual. In fact, how we do business in reopened companies will be quite different. We will all learn to live alongside what we cannot see or comprehensively control. This reality will require daily actions that were not necessary in the past. However, it is precisely those protections and those incremental steps that will restore our economy while also guarding the health of others. We are a blessed community. Let's all remember why. One of our city's primary assets is our focus on unity and diversity. We honor people. We respect needs, and we work proactively towards solutions. As a commission, we have and we will continue to function with those values. So, as Audrey Kane suggested, let's take a deep breath together, knowing we're on the same page to determine a dependable way to win this battle together. And as we gather today, we are not fighting or supporting opposing viewpoints. Instead, everyone in this discussion seeks to determine the wisest way to implement reopening decisions in the shortest, safest time possible. That's good news. And if you're listening as a concerned consumer, Remember, you will ultimately have the ability to control how you choose to re-engage into the phased opening of commerce as it is reestablished. So let's begin. Our opening presentation will be from community stakeholders of area businesses, and City Manager Delgado will provide an overview of who will be speaking. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I may, please.
You sure can.
Hearing this, and most of you shared for the very first time, as one of the others of 6 that sit here with you, I can concur with most of what you said, because I know today primarily was dedicated to hear from the business community and only dealing with those particular issues and concerns they may have to help us know how we can best support them moving forward as we reopen here in our city. But I think it's important to understand also, you mentioned the quality of life. And I think quality of life also has a bearing on, people and their mental capacity. So I would encourage us to also understand, in addition to business operations and businesses getting back to some form of normalcy, where, how we may go about it in phases or however, as we make those decisions moving forward here in the next few days. I think it's important too that we understand how we can maybe help support families and all to get out again and be viable as well as they can with some kind of situation, whether opening up some of our trails, nature trail park, that kind of thing. Okay.
Agree. I put in my opening that I think we all want to find that magic moment and get started again. So yes, I agree 100%. Any other comments? And then Tony, you can kick it off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, commissioners. And obviously, I really want to thank our business partners who have agreed to go ahead and speak today. We asked them just last week, and very quickly, many of them said, yes, we want to be part of this. And so thank you all. Who we have on tap today, we're going to kick off with Chris Ann Long with Bridge Local. She's helped us and helped the community put together a very, very comprehensive business survey. I think many of you have seen it. We thought it'd be great to have her kick off, kind of tell us a little bit about that survey and some of the responses and information that she's been able to glean. Then we'll have Julie Townsend, our partner downtown with the LDDA. She'll speak a little bit about some of the merchants in the downtown area and what she's seeing. Larry Mitchell is with us. Many of you know Larry with the Central Florida Business Diversity Council. He takes a look at our business entities from a different angle, and I think it's important that he be part of this discussion and provide us that information. Corey Skates is with us. He's with our Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, many of us have worked with Corey, represents thousands of businesses within our area. And so obviously we want him to be part of the process. And then we'll close with Steve Scruggs with Lakeland Economic Development Council. He's been integral in doing many of the new projects that we see coming on board on the major scope throughout the city. And so he brings forward a different perspective from some of the major development and some of the major industries within our community. So with that, if there are no questions, I'd like to ask Chris Ann Long to go ahead and kick us off and talk to us a little bit about the survey that she's been managing up to this point.
Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully won't have any technical issues with that. Can you see? Let me get the presentation going. All right, how are we doing so far? Can you see what I'm seeing? I can't. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Commissioner Reed. Awesome.
Yes, we can see what you're saying, and it may be that depending on your computer, you may need to make the people smaller and the picture bigger, which you can do by just sliding up the line. Not necessarily you, each of those observing.
Okay. Okay, so I am just basically giving you the current results, and I'm just calling these the preliminary results because until we are in a phase of reopening or into a next steps situation, I wanted to allow people to continue to respond. So I'm giving you the kind of a moment in time results for this survey at this point in time. But before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you and some acknowledgement to those who have helped make this survey possible and to get it out to almost 500 people before we actually gathered the results for this report. So thank you to Rob Arturi and Craig Hosking Becky at Central Florida SCORE, Kate Lake at my office and more, Anna Rivera at the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber, Larry Mitchell at the Central Florida Business Diversity Council. City of Lakeland Communications Department was fantastic in helping get that out to the Lakeland community. And I also was able to get some assistance from the Polk County Tax Collector's Office. So thank you to everyone who helped us to reach the business community at this during this time. So a little bit about the respondents. When I pulled the report, we had 489 responses with 210 comments. So I'm not going to share those 210 comments here, but I want all the commissioners and anyone who is interested in receiving those to have an opportunity to read those. There's a lot of insight and a lot of information and opinions and thoughts and challenges that aren't being addressed in the results of the survey. I pulled out of the all of those who responded, 231 were reporting that they were Lakeland businesses. Of those 489, 445 reported that they were in fact business owners, and 16 of those were nonprofit representatives. Gathering all of the numbers that were shared as to how many employees they had at the beginning of COVID-19, the collective representation of this report is representing 3,200 employees across the county. So that does not exclude the Lakeland segment. And of those businesses, let me go ahead and see if I can get, there we go. Of those businesses, this is the breakdown of how long they've been in business. So as you can see, we have a pretty good, probably more than 50% are in the first 10 years of business. And that's a pretty important number, I think, as we consider their age and their ability to adapt, or what was the statement from Benjamin? I can't remember. I always have heard it, adapt or die, so I don't want to use that horrible word.
Adapt or perish. Adapt or perish.
Adapt or perish. Thank you. Okay, and we, at the request of some people who provided some input as to some questions we should include in the survey, we wanted to get an idea of where everyone was represented as far as where they're getting support through local business organizations. So we included as many as we possibly could without making it too cumbersome. And then these are the top three that had responses. But I found it very interesting and worth noting that over approximately 50% of those respondents don't have an affiliation with a business organization. And I think it's just, for me, it's important, whatever we do decide to do moving forward, we need to do what we can to make sure that I'm calling these the unnetworked businesses, those that are not affiliated, that are not connected. How are we going to make sure that we can reach out to them and provide them information in the most compelling way? So that's just something for us to be thinking about as we go forward. So this is the status of the businesses prior to COVID-19. They self-identified as either strong or stable, growing like crazy. They were in a deep decline prior, facing challenges, or just business was okay. So we had 256 saying everything was strong and stable, and 109 saying they were growing like crazy. So, 360, 70 people indicated that they were on a positive slope. The results on the current impact on revenue at this point in time is the breakdown here. You have revenue down by 50% up at the top in yellow, and you have revenue is down by 25%. 56 respondents said 25, 76 said 75%, and revenue is the same or better. And the reason that the text is red in here, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what I was doing. When I exported this information, it cut off. So I wanted to make sure you had those numbers and were able to see them. And so the biggest swath of our respondents are generating little to no income at this point in time, with 49.21%. And then the smaller graph is your answers to whether they had to cease operations or whether they've, and this didn't qualify. This isn't, so one of the things we've learned along the way is that many businesses chose to close their businesses, even though they could continue to remain open as an essential business. So no, 285, and yes, 204. So in the survey, there were a series of questions about whether the shutdown were to end in a week, 2 weeks, a month, or 2 months. And so what I did here was just take the two extremes and give you kind of a synopsis of the trend so that you could see where we start with 1 week of closing or opening and but what it would look like 2 months from now if we weren't able to open for 2 months. And so what you can see is that the confidence in keeping the business open in the future, if they're able to open in 1 week versus 2 months, drops us out of a 314 people saying we will not close to 40% fewer saying that they would be able to stay open, and 25% feeling like they would have to close permanently if they cannot open for 2 months. So that's just to give you some sentiment as to the trend between now and 2 months from now. And then the next few slides are going to be their main concerns. This is the most significant concern over all of the respondents, which is the access to economic assistance and more funding being available. So with the question was laid out with them selecting, and these were not mutually exclusive. So this wasn't a scale of 1 to 9. This was, how important is this issue for you as a business? If it's not important or not significant, it was a 1. And if it was extremely significant, critical issue, it was a 5. So as I go through these next ones, you'll be able to see how critical each of these are. But this was the number 1, so I started with it. Since there was an odd number, I was going to have one by itself, so I figured I'd start with that one. And then we have 185 is critical that they're able to pay their rent, making payroll 205. The employees' financial well-being 235, and I'm just reading the number of the most response in this case. Okay, so just so you understand, and you can see as they're displayed on the screen for the interest of time. And losing customers and accounts and projects, 251 responded that was a critical issue for them. Then we went into losing employees, and that was a less critical issue. I think that many of the decisions to keep employees, and obviously knowing that it's going to be challenging for employees to leave their employ and find a new job. So I don't think that was a critical concern for them. But hiring new employees was extremely unimportant. They're probably not in the position of being able to hire anyone at this time. Then sourcing inventory and or supplies as far as the supply chain is concerned, and being able to access the things that they're going to need when they reopen, as well as traffic and customer leads. Those were all of those critical issues and main concerns for the businesses. Now, at this point in time, 160 of them replied that they have had to lay off employees, and 329 have said no. And this gives me a lot of cause for concern, because I believe that many of them made decisions to keep their employees with the promise of economic support and relief coming from the PPP and the CARES and the EIDL. And what we know is how quickly that has depleted. And I don't want to be pessimistic, but I am not confident that this next phase is actually going to be able to help. And therefore, we have a lot of businesses who decided to stay open and keep their employees, or not necessarily stay open, but those even that had to close have continued to maintain payment of their employees with the promise or the optimism that they would receive funding. So I just wanted to make sure I spent a little bit of time on that. That's a concerning number for me as I was going through this. As far as the employees and whether or not they will have to lay off additional employees at this point in time, or depending upon the two extremes, if we ended in the government shutdown in a week versus 2 months from now. So we have 332 responding that they will not need to lay off any additional employees, but then that reduces to more than half, or actually, sorry, 35% if we cannot open for 2 months. So you can see where everything's falling as we go through that trend of time. We asked the respondents if they've applied for any of the following forms of assistance, and so you can see that a significant number, and you can also tell that there are multiple choices allowed in this question, so 754 responses of the 489. So a lot of people had applied for multiple sources of revenue or sources of financial support. And then here's where we are with whether they have received funding approved. So 344 have said they have not been able to secure funding at this point in time. And 78 said that they were approved but have not yet received the funds. I do have the opportunity to share good news for our company that, you know, when we filled out this form, we were in that boat. And since then we have, and I've been hearing from a lot of businesses that day by day, some of them are getting the notifications and signing the paperwork for PPP. So I think that's, these are very fluid results, of course. And then yes, 67 of them had said that they had received funding for whatever they had applied for. And then as far as how much time the funding will help them, we asked them to tell us how long that would allow for them to stay afloat. So 171 said a month or more, and then the 235 said that wasn't applicable, meaning either they hadn't applied or that it wasn't going to be relevant to them. So you kind of a positive spin on that particular question. 35 said that they might recover what they've already spent, meaning probably paying those employees, and then a week or a few weeks were the other two responses. So then we asked, in order to, apart from the assistance that they've received or expect to receive, what additional funding would you need to satisfy the needs of your business through the end of April? So this was just anything, unpaid bills, outstanding debt, things that were not going to be covered by the PPP or any of the approved things that they could spend the money on if they received it. And you see that a very large number is less than $1,000. 142 of the respondents said all they really would need for the end of April is less than $1,000. And I thought that was optimistic. And if we're talking at some point in time about where we can help the most, it might not be as a big a number as we might predict. There were 70 who said it will probably be more than 10,000. So we need to take consideration of what their needs are. And then the rest, adding up on under $10,000 for each of these individual businesses. So I think that this is an important statistic for us to be considering. And now for the month of May, that obviously is going to change. So a lot of businesses had what they needed to get through April, and going forward might not be able to do the additional things that they will need to stay open or to continue to maintain the current status of their businesses. So we have 106 still only needing less than $1,000. The number needing more than $10,000 increases. And then the other numbers on the left side of the screen maintain around the same breakdown. And then as far as reopening, the two extremes, so if the government shutdown were to end at the following points, how long will it take you to return to normal business function? If it ended in a week, most of them could probably be returning to a normal function within 1 month. It's 1 to 2 weeks to a month. And then you can see the breakdown of the additional time required. And then two months from now, you can see how that breaks down as well. As far as rehiring employees, if we were to end in a week, they haven't let off their employees, so this was not applicable to them. However, if they were going to be able to rehire, 130 of them would say, yes, we'd be able to do that if we ended it sooner. And quite a few, there's quite a bit of a change if it ended 2 months from now, and that's obviously pretty logical. Now, these last few slides are just about the sentiment of those being responding to the survey. So just to give you an idea of where they feel the federal government, the state government, and the local government are with how they feel government is handling making reopening the economy a priority and also being sensitive to the needs of small business. So we have just a kind of a mixed environment here. I'm not really sure how I want to read the results here. I'll just let you look at those and see where everyone landed. The next slide is the state government sentiment. And the last is the local. And you can see, one of the things I'm going to do is provide you with these slides, but also the full report so that you can see all of these questions as they're laid out in the way that they were asked in the survey, so that you all can kind of wrap your head around it in your own ways, the way your brains absorb information. Then the last question was as far as how they felt about ending the shutdown. So, this is the conversation we weren't really going to get into dispute with today, but this information was gathered in the survey for you guys to be able to see. And I think it's clear we're all over the place when it comes to how we feel about the situation. So I don't think there's anything conclusive here that you can draw for how people are truly feeling about ending the shutdown. Then the last question, I believe, was ending the shutdown over time based on the necessity of business or when there is no new cases of COVID-19. And then the last one was when we have a vaccine. And that one's the most conclusive. I think waiting until we have a vaccine was a strong opinion against, and then a lot of people just filtered in around that. But that is the end of those slides, and that's all I really wanted to share. I'm hoping I didn't take too long. I just wanted to be comprehensive with all the questions that were asked in the survey.
Okay, so any questions by commissioners? A lot of information, data, and you're going to give us that slide set you said, which we appreciate getting, and that's 1 week. And I think in a week, getting 500, almost 500 responses is pretty decent.
Yep, it was a lot of collaborative effort. It was. I told I sent text message to someone saying I'm going at this with all I've got. So we'll see how far we get.
Thank you very much for doing it. And I think I speak for the commissioners. We'd love to have the written comments sent as well, so that we have a chance to go through those. We, by the way, get a summary report of that every week so that people know from both the Nextdoor, Twitter, Facebook, that's done by our communications department, and it's very, very helpful in times like these particularly. All right, Mr. Cook.
Just letting you know, you were emailed the presentation, and you'll be emailed all the presentations today.
Thank you, sir, for your thoroughness once again. That brings us.
And I will have to. Sorry, just one last thing. I will have to send you the comments separately because they were not included in the presentation. So it'll probably just be a PDF with everything. And no, there's no personal information for any of the people who replied. You won't know who said what or what business they represent. It's just straight up the comments anonymously.
Perfect. All right. Julie, were you starting to say something? Did you want to say something earlier? You're next. No.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. I don't have a slideshow presentation. You'll just have to hear me rattle on about some things, but just wanted to share the current situation in downtown. I'm sure many of you, if you are ever happening to come to City Hall, probably take a peek at what's going on downtown. The lots of parking on an up note, lots of available parking. We have 3 restaurants that are closed, during this period, and they did not reopen. We had about 5 or 6 that were closed initially, and several of those have reopened to participate in the curbside and the takeout. We've got a couple of bars that are selling with their package licenses, but others that are remaining closed. A lot of the statistics that Chris-Ann shared are the things that I'm hearing as well. Particularly, the restaurants are quoting that they are the survey that I distributed to them. They're about 70 to 90% down, and I'm sure that is pretty similarly for restaurants all throughout. But we had some report that they're getting PPP, but just as many say that they were not able to secure any funds. So we don't have an overwhelming number of folks that are getting assistance through any of those programs. And I think that is because a lot of it dried up very quickly, and we had technical problems and all kinds of things. And we do have some of the property owners that are providing some relief. It's more of a cash flow management relief. The reports that I'm getting are that rents are mainly deferred, but not necessarily reduced or forgiven. So they are going to be expected to pay those back, by the end of the year, or maybe they could restructure. Some are talking about restructuring leases, but not a lot of forgiveness per se in terms of the rents. And obviously there's a lot of folks that rent space in downtown. We do have some retailers and restaurants that are owner occupied, but most of them are renting their space. Obviously, the retail is, 95 to 100% down because they're closed. We do have a few that have essential items, and so they chose to remain open so that they could sell those essential items. But, you're not seeing folks coming downtown to buy hand sanitizer and soap and things like that, like they would at Walmart or, Publix or anything like that. So some are just using those items as their foot in the door to be able to remain open and then still sell some of their other items. And a lot of folks are trying to do online and sell their items online and doing their own personal delivery of items. So not necessarily shipping, but maybe just driving those things to their customers' front doors on their own. Very proud of the downtown businesses. They have done a really great job of trying to be innovative and adaptive in terms of, the curbside and the pickup and the family meals and just their own personal media, their own social media presence. We've got a couple of social media groups that are, rally around the restaurants and support local restaurants and support local small businesses. So I think they've gotten a lot of love through those groups, and that has certainly helped. But, downtown by nature is experiential. And I mean, our whole economy is based on mass gatherings. That's the whole sort of nature of downtown. So without First Friday, without the farmers market, we closed the farmers market on the 14th of March. We are doing a drop-off pickup at the LDDA office. So we created a small square store for some of the items for some of our merchants, but I would say it's, grains of sand on the beach in comparison to the sales that they were doing. We do have some of our farmers who are selling from their farms. But we've got the honey folks, and we've got the beef jerky folks, and we've got Ethos coffee roasters, and we've got all those folks that make their own products that are struggling to get those to their final destination of their customers. Because again, the farmers market was very social. It was very community oriented. It was less. I wouldn't say it was. It was almost as if it was less about the shopping and more about the community experience. And so without that, it's very difficult to get folks to get those products in the hands of their final customers. But we're, I think rent is the largest obstacle for these folks. So the fact that they are getting some deferments is good. But ultimately, if they're, if the revenues are not going to be there, even if we open tomorrow, we're not going to see business as usual like it was the beginning of March. And so I think we're going to continue to see the downtown businesses, like all the others, I'm sure, continue to struggle. And we're just, hopeful that we can make it through the end of May. That was one of the questions that I asked as well was, if you had some relief funds, could you get through May? And so about 90% of those folks said yes. But again, they're looking for the PPP or the other business loans to help offset their costs, mostly the rent costs and the folks that have kept the employees on.
I would also think back to the farmers market that some of those purchases too are more impulsive than others in that environment. That customer is less online oriented probably than most. May not be true.
Yeah, I agree. It's a community based experience, and although other markets in the state, we're very connected with other markets, and farmers market is considered essential. And so we have gotten questions about why haven't you reopened the market? You're essential. It's just, I don't see how you can do that safely. And it's your property, and you probably wouldn't let us if we asked. So we're still waiting to see. But other markets that are, oh, sorry, my automatic lights that the city made me install goes off. Goes off.
Welcome.
So, but yeah, other markets are, some are doing drive-through. It's a pick up and drop off, and that's what we're doing at our office. So, you know, our farmers, we would be doing something more severe, I think, if our farmers had no way to reach their customers. But the actual farmers that we have at the farmers market are getting some of their goods to their customers. We have obviously some resellers of produce, and they would go to the large market in Plant City and buy and then resell at the market. And so we've seen a little bit of that, but Echo Farms is selling out of her farm. Aqua Organics has a space over on Massachusetts that she sells from. She owns a building over there. And, you know, many of them had online stores as well. So they were selling their, you know, coffees or their products on their own websites. So I think the lesson is that everybody's going to have a website where they can sell products when this is all said and done.
If they haven't had. Good, Chrisanne. Yes, Commissioner McCarley.
Hey, Julie, I know usually you guys are quieter in the summer for farmers market. Like, is there a time when you're usually closed? Would you guys consider maybe trying to shift the season? I know that's the other problem with farmers markets right now is we're in high season. Like, this is a busy time for you guys. Have you thought about that or talked to vendors about that option?
Yes, we are typically closed in August. And so, you know, just not knowing the temperature of where the governor is going and where the city of Lakeland is going, obviously we are at your mercy because you own the space that we use for the market. So we were thinking best case scenario, if there was a July lifting of mass gatherings, because again, this to me, it's a mass gathering, and I could see retail reopening and restaurants even reopening. But I'm not sure we're going to have Red, White, and Kaboom. I'm not sure we're doing First Friday. I'm not sure we're doing the farmers market. Those are the kinds of things that are, you know, I think those come last, unfortunately. But August, we would normally be closed. Staff has already said we will absolutely stay open in August if any vendors want to do so, because I think people will be ready. Even though it'll be hot, I think people will be happy to be out and about and socializing if we're able to do that.
Any other commissioners' comments? And I would think, maybe being too optimistic, but by July you could be in a position where you could be orchestrating some of those things in a safe way with the right kind of patterns for people and the right distances on booths, and we take a little more street than we would normally have taken to make it happen. And there would be some sentiment of pent-up demand that would want to get out and take advantage of some of those things too. All right, but of course, as you said, Commissioner McCarley, obviously all that stuff has to be in coordination with the governor's programs too. All right, who's next?
Mr. Mayor, I believe our friend Larry Mitchell's next.
Mr. Mitchell, you are on, sir. Unmute, and then we're ready to go. You have to unmute your mic.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hello, you hear me? Okay, yes.
Yes, we can. It's great to have you here.
CFBDC, or Central Florida Business Diversity Council, is a nonprofit organization that's been around for about 15 years. It started off with general contractors and subcontractors supported by the county. And we revised that stuff about 7 years ago. And we're housed at downtown at my office in Moore. I want to thank first Commissioner Phillip for putting us on this panel and recognizing the importance of this organization as far as representing minority businesses in Lakeland. Also for Tony for Sin, who's a member. The county and the city is a member of CFBDC and the school board. So for having us participate, oftentimes, some businesses, particularly Black and Hispanic businesses, are not at the table. And this commission, and I said, it has made it a purpose from the time that I've been president and the mayor to incorporate us into discussion. So having said that, CFBDC envision an environment in which diversified businesses can have a fair and equitable seat at the table. We advocate for businesses. We put a lot of educational pieces together, and we provide procurement opportunities, mainly to the city, county, and the school board for those who qualify. Christine, I want to thank you for initiating this. From what I understand, it's done a wonderful job. I think we've learned a lot from hardship situations, and one of them is having these kind of discussions in good times and bad times. What we did at CFBDC, we got together with a small group of our members and board members, and we decided that we would do a qualitative and sort of an anecdotal approach to conducting interviews by email and personal. We got on the phone, we identified a diverse of businesses throughout the community, and we identified them and talked with them personally. And so what you will hear from us, from me today, is basically those areas that we touched and communicated with and comments from them. And then they provided us with solutions, and then we took and thirdly, a valuable observation of all that together. So it was like three parts to it all. And some of the businesses included nonprofits, of course, and for-profits. Some of the areas that was included was medical. We had several pharmacists, a physician, and a psychologist. And we asked the question simply, how have COVID-19 affected your business? The pharmacist's concern was that when they ordered a drug that they didn't have in stock, delivery was not, it was not timely. So you could not sometimes get the medication that you didn't have in stock delivered on a timely basis. Secondly, the fee, they were for fee service, meaning that if the prescription costs you $20, and most of them get $250 from the insurance company as that fee that goes to the pharmacist, and that fee was not delivered on a timely basis. Okay, and also that they attempted they did not get any PPP money. At least they haven't heard from them. And I doubt they will from that first bill. Secondly, the physician was in retirement, going into retirement. And because of this event, that they had to postpone retirement and go back to work. The psychologist, in his experience, his experience was that they couldn't get customers to come into the office. They had to do a lot of telecommunication, but some of it needed to be in-house, and therefore they was affected through their billing process of those services that they was providing. In the area of faith-based and nonprofit, we talked to several churches. Of course, revenues was affected through tithe and offering, the volunteer program, the staff was put on furlough. In the nonprofits, in homeless shelters, for an example, you had to continue to serve those that you house. In my case, at New Life, it's like 25 individuals, men and women. Some of them paid through their rent. Some of them was waiting on disability claims, which is delayed. So therefore, their shortfall in having the revenue to operate. And in addition to that, you had the grants that they receive, CDBG or federal grants, and that process has been delayed in payment and services because the staff is not there to provide it, and you can bill. And in another case, AARP, we had 3 employees from AARP who pays the staff salary, and AARP has been closed down for 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm not sure when they'll be back. So those shelters hurt and short-served in a sense, but we're doing the best they can. And we have the Homeless Coalition, and I was glad to hear that those CDBG dollars or HUD dollars are coming down from Jacksonville to our local Homeless Coalition. There are some lawyers legal individuals that we contacted personally, and one law firm said that, Larry, we had to put everyone, over half of the staff on furlough, and that we started to rotate them after a week, 2 or 3 hours out of the week. And then even his partner, he had to put on part-time. So when it comes to home health care, a lot of our Black businesses have home health care businesses and or caregivers, and they staff too had to be furloughed, and mainly because the people that they took care of, the clients, were elderly, sick, high risk, and they were fearful, and the caregiver was fearful because of the high possibility of infection. And so they were affected directly by being vulnerable population. When it comes to insurance, I have one insurance, a major insurance company that had to sell, and they had 6 employees. Those 6 employees lost their jobs, and the stimulus package never arrived, and that's going to be a common thing you're going to see with about 9% of the people that we had interviews with. It came to restaurants and catering service businesses. Well, you can just imagine if your business is catering, that those events, those banquets have been delayed or suspended, and therefore they were left with cancellation, staff laid off, even the inventory that they had in stock. That was caused spoilage, or they couldn't get inventory on a timely basis for delivery. In the area of lawn service businesses, the lawn service that we interviewed business said that out of 28 clients that he have, over 10 of those clients are 3 or 4 weeks behind in payment. He said that his stimulus funds ran out before application was submitted. And I think it was, he also mentioned that Ruth Charles? Yeah, Ruth, some of the businesses received that had over 100 employees was able to receive their PP funds, and he found out that none of the people that he knew was able, that was small business, was able to receive that was Ruth Chris. You heard that story about Ruth. I think he receives hundreds of millions of dollars. In the area of contractors, general contractors and subs, the subs, most of them are working when it comes to private contracts, but there's been a suspension with government contracts. And so it showed where, it's always good to have a diverse of contracts in times like this come about. Entertainment, a lot of you have to understand, a lot of the nonprofits depend on fundraising for their operation, for their revenue. Under New Life, our homeless shelter, 35% of our income comes through our entertainment, having banquets and so forth. And one of the things that we're finding out that these concerts, of course, and banquets have been delayed for obvious reasons, and that they're going to virtual banquets, virtual meetings to raise money. We've never done it before, but that's what New Life is going to be doing this year in November. And we'll see how that turns out. When it comes to financial services, and those businesses that was in the financial service business, they said the market was causing fear, and people was holding on to their money, and that they were not too eager to invest just on things or pay out things that was essential, necessary at the moment. They were, some of them were shutting down, and some of them was counseling because their client was having mental health issues, distress. So mental health distress, not in fear, not having someone really who knew what they were talking about to counsel them, was three areas that was common among most of the people that we interviewed. Education, we interviewed some charter schools who ran them, owned them, or private schools, and there was a lot of panic there. A lot of staff that was furloughed. There were childcare issues. There were concerns of just being shut in the house and trying to find things to keep their attention. There was overeating. I found that a lot in a lot of these situations, and health issues. And there were incubators. There was office. We interviewed a couple businesses that were incubators who rent space, and one mentioned that they lost 30% of their revenue. And another one said that they had probably, I think, about 15 of their monthly rentals canceled. We had another business that is a national corporate speaker, and because of traveling, he could not get to those corporate businesses, and so he had to create, sort of rebrand himself in a sense of a virtual speaking. And overall thing was three things that I mentioned: stimulus funds not available, mental health, and fear for financial stability. And if I may conclude, one of the, I think it was the insurance business. I'd like to read what he said. He said, essential business as well. Been keeping most meetings virtual. One of the biggest things is the current state of the market and how it will play on mid and long-term goals with this concern. He said, having to coach them, I mean his clients, through emotional distress again. People have anxiety due to instability of finance. This is real estate and finance. People start to take a closer look at their insurance due to concerns of mortality. That's what he's found. They're having more discussions about that. Also, to get insurance, you might have to have blood work, and they was concerned about people going in and out of the home to do blood work. But can I get this done due to people not letting people come into their house? The exchange of goods and services cause people to not want to take on more obligations. It also brings to mind the principle of financial planning. So that's an emphasis that I think a lot of us are learning from this experience, the importance of having cash reserve. For the sake of time, I'll just conclude that in our community, the Black community in particular, for organization that really was focusing on the needs, we found that the NAACP has been very helpful on a national, state, and local basis. We have a webinar every week with the national president of the NAACP, also with congressmen that's on that panel who's able to take questions and answers. We have found that we do that CLBDC weekly or bi-weekly. We have a forum, a virtual conference call that we explain the PPP, and we have a financial person from the bank on that panel to help us to answer questions. And this week, I think the 29th, we have Dr. Haight to be on our conference call to discuss issues concerned with the Black community, how the disparity and inequality of this virus has affected us. So that's my discussion.
Larry, thank you for that update. And I know that a lot of, you had made the comment that 90% of the funding you didn't expect to come through. What is the real reason behind some of that from your perspective? What are some of the hitches that would make it so that the applications aren't going to be as viable?
Well, those applications was, first of all, Mayor, what I've learned, because I applied, is that if you don't have a relationship with a bank, okay, and these are big banks. You know, I read somewhere where, you know, their fees was over $500 million that they collected. One particular bank, I think it was Chase, you know, and I found out that early in the ball game before, you need to have, what I found, you need to have a relationship with someone in the bank. You know, Black Americans spend $3.8 trillion and in the economy, the GNP. And what I found out locally, that unlike it used to be, where it was more customer service, personal, I'm not finding that today. For some reason, the bank industry has changed as far as how they serve people. Maybe because of technology or whatever, it's not personal anymore. And we don't have the big money. It seems like it's harder for the small guy to have that kind of relationship. There are other lenders out there, but they're not local, and you have to sort of look for them through a mortgage broker or someone like that. And this first go round, by the time you got to them, all the money was gone.
Chrisanne, you and I talked about this to some degree, and you might make a short summary availability of some of the things that could be set up, particularly with CARES.
Okay. Can you be specific? Remind me of what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
We have some businesses that aren't registered well and that need to have the opportunity to go through some organization in advance. And this would be an opportunity maybe for local funds that could help some of that as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So there is a line, or there's a section of the CARES Act that was written specifically to providing business resources. So I'll pull that out and I'll include a little bit of a summary there. Yeah.
Thank you. That'd be great. Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And hearing what Mr. Mitchell has mentioned, I just want to make sure that he is aware, and hopefully you are, because I heard you mention you've been on calls with the national headquarters for NAACP, and want to make sure that you they are aware, because I was just on a call this past Friday, Larry, where with what we call the White House staff and stakeholders regarding the CARES Act and PPP, and the second round of funds that have been allocated, $30 billion of that allocation is for what they would call the racial disadvantaged and neglected communities. But you got to make sure you make contact if you're having a challenge in the second round with your local SBA. Now, local small business associations, small business administration offices to support you getting through some of these hurdles. And if you could, and maybe we need to talk off a sidebar, and I don't have no problem with that, because I was hearing what I heard this past Friday, the 24th, that these things are available to, especially again, those disadvantaged and neglected communities when their businesses, small businesses, have not had the opportunity to receive dollars of funding accordingly. So if you have not been aware of this, I certainly would like to give you a call, or you call me and we talk about it here after the call today, okay?
And its timeliness is important on that.
Yes, very much so.
Because we know it'll happen what happened last time, so we need to jump. Okay, very good. Any other comments from commissioners? Dr. Skates, I think that means you're up next.
Doctor, I've been promoted. I was just going to add to what Commissioner Walker was saying in terms of this most recent round of the CARES Act. He's exactly correct in terms of helping to get past some of those disparities. Those loans did open this morning at 10:30 for new applications. So if they can get in as soon as possible, that would be great. And I'm trying to share my screen, so let's see.
And if I could, Corey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if I could, it's important, as the mayor said, and you've already said as well, but if you're having some shortfall or having a challenge, through your local chamber, as you are able and very much able to help support these particular businesses that are in our disadvantaged and neglected communities who are, struggling, they can get to the local SBA also, because these different sources are there to be able to support. And of course, we understand from the call I was on Friday, the White House has made sure through Dr. Ben Carson and his what he's doing as well, to make sure the dollars are there to help support. But like you said, time is of essence, and it's nationwide, so you got to make sure you get there and get to making applications appropriately.
All right.
All right. If you'd like to give your presentation, yes, I see it. Can we make it full screen? Getting that.
Here, I make it
arrows to the right of each other. Where do we do it?
I'm not sure how you make it full screen, but is it okay as it is?
Yes, sure. Go ahead. We'll make it work.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commission. Thank you, Tony, city staff, and all of my friends on the call today. I just want to start by saying thank you to all of you for your leadership in these unprecedented times. You have no idea how much we appreciate the support and all the tough decisions that all of you have been making. And we hope to work with you and look forward to collaborating with you moving forward. Just wanted to start today very quickly by going through a list of some of the initiatives that we've been working on at the Chamber. As many of you know who are at our honors event this year, we've changed our mission to being a catalyst, convener, and champion for our community. And as Chris Ann, I'm sure, has known for a long time, some of us have had to make changes in the way that we do things. And what we've been saying is our 1 to 2 year plan has now become a 1 to 2 week plan. So we've had to start learning how to do things more virtually. And fortunately, it's allowed us to meet people more where they are. Some individuals that may not have been able to participate with us in the past are now able to do that through some of the new initiatives that we're rolling out. One of the things we did right at the beginning of the whole COVID-19 situation was we began making wellness checks to all 1,400 of our investors, as well as former investors and prospects, just to check in and see how they're doing. And I'm sure, as you can assume, those calls have gotten more difficult as we've gone further into this process. I can tell you this has been the most difficult month in my 14 years of doing chamber work. We've cried a lot as a staff, as a board, as a community. So we want you to just know that this staff at the Chamber is one of a kind. I can tell you they're a bunch of rock stars. They are working 14-hour days to ensure that our businesses have access to those timely, relevant information to hopefully make good decisions. We also distributed 2 surveys. We did one prior to the Safer at Home order, and then one just this week in conjunction with the Business Observer magazine. We had actually started down that road before Chrisanne had started on hers, and we had it all together and we're ready to launch it. So if there's anything that comes up in the future, we look forward to collaborating with her as well as the other organizations that participated in the last one. And I'll go through some of the highlights of those in just a couple minutes. We also set up a gift card incentive program with our friend Julie over at LDDA. This hopefully allowed some of our businesses, both chamber members and non-members, to have an opportunity to get some cash flow. We were saying buy now, spend later. So hopefully they were able to support their businesses through these rough times. We also created a chamber restaurant page that was very clickable and easy to be able to go in order to go or carry out meals from all of our chamber investor restaurants. We started chamber daily virtual chats. We actually had one with Peace River this morning on how to help your mental health throughout the COVID-19 process. We've also hosted many webinars and conference calls with congressional leaders and other business support organizations like the Florida Chamber and the U.S. Chamber. In fact, we've actually worked directly with the U.S. Chamber on the latest incarnation of the CARES Act, which was able to help get some of these monies hopefully into some more of our diverse communities and underserved communities, as well as we've been working with our FACP, which is our state organization, and ACCE, which is our national organization, because many of you may not be aware that chambers of commerce are 501c6 organizations, and we do not qualify for PPP funding. So we've been working to try to get our industry included in one of the next phases. And we've also been collecting videos. We've been hashtagging those open for business. And we've also done our Shift podcast. We've continued to do those every week. And if you haven't had a chance to do so yet, we have a great one featuring our very own Tony Delgado. So you can go back into our archives and listen to Tony a little bit if you've got some time. I was working this weekend with Dr. Jerry Parrish, who's the chief economist for the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and just wanted to share with you some information regarding unemployment. Unfortunately, the most updated information that they have currently from the DEO is as of April 4th. So the numbers you can see here, you can anticipate they've at least doubled or maybe tripled since the time of this production. At this time on April 4th, you can see there were 436,000 in the state and about 13,000 in Polk County. And at that time on April 4th, about 4.5% of our labor force was filing for unemployment claims. Okay, I talked about the survey that we were working on, and we've got some initial results. We've only launched this just a few days ago, but wanted to give you some high-level feedback that we've received. Initially, we just wanted to see sectors where they fell. We had a very good range of different sectors represented, including that 42% other, which kind of encompassed everything that's not listed on this sheet. What's the status of your business? The one that sticks out is the other, of course, and that was a place where they could leave comments. So a lot of people put in other, but they may have fallen into one of these other segments as well. The other comments were things such as all of our sales are online now, we're only working by phone only, or we're working from home. If operating as usual or partially open, what percent of your employees are working remotely? As you can see, about 75% have some segment of their employees working remotely at this time. Since COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order, have you, these are some different, I'm trying to see it myself because it's a little small, retained all employees, furloughed employees, laid off employees. Fortunately, we've seen most of the businesses who've responded have been able to retain their employees. But as Chrisanne spoke of earlier, this may come back at a later point the further this goes on, because I know all of our businesses are doing the best by their employees at this time and are trying to keep them employed, but it may end up hurting their bottom line the further they go out. And so we may see these numbers change the further this COVID-19 situation continues. Pre-COVID-19, how many employees did you have? So as you see in this question, about 90% of those surveys had fewer than 50 employees. How many employees were furloughed? As you see, the vast majority, 76%, were none, but there were a few that furloughed employees. Fortunately for furloughed employees, many of them are able to retain their benefits while they're on furlough as opposed to being directly let go. That leads us to the next question. How many were laid off? 83% said they haven't had to lay off any individuals yet. And the others, it was a small amount for the most part. Furloughed and laid off employees comprise what percentage of your employment? As you can see, again, it's a small number based upon the last two slides. What percentage of monthly sales and expenses declined? This is one where you can see the expenses have not gone down much, but the income has. So this is something that, of course, is not sustainable for most of our businesses or any of our businesses for that matter. So this is something we're going to have to continue to monitor as we move forward. Has your business applied for relief funds and loans? We talked about that earlier. We have had about 70% of those surveyed say that they have applied for the PPP funding, as well as some of the SBA loans, which are like the EIDL loan, which the chamber was able to apply for. Also state relief, which is like the SBDC's small business bridge loan. And then some have looked at conventional loans from banks. How likely is your business to survive at current expense levels? Highly likely was still the majority, but we still had 36%, somewhat likely, which is about 50%. And then unfortunately, we had 17% at not likely. What should your business and industry sector be allowed? When should they be allowed to reopen? Of course, we hear from a lot of people that say now, but when you look at the other category, it was mostly a combination of a lot of the ones above. They wanted some feedback from local, state, federal authorities. Of course, our healthcare community, they want to make sure that they're doing what is best for their employees as well as their patrons. So it was a pretty good mix of responses in terms of when they should be allowed to reopen their businesses. Which would you prefer for reopening? The majority was the governor doing it on a county by county basis, but there was also some interest in a one-time governor across the board. And then there was also some interest in local city and county government, of course, making those decisions. And then there were a few that said leave it up to the businesses. There we go. Finally, I'll go through this one just quickly. When they're lifted, what are the most immediate concerns for business? And actually on this one with the weighted average, the lowest score is the highest concern. So in this one, the number one result was how long it will take to reach pre-COVID-19 sales and profitability. Number two, biggest concern, having enough customers to return. And number three was having enough working capital to restart my business. And just so you know, with this, we had about 240 pages of comments in addition to the survey results. So we'll be able to get all those to you as well. On a bit of positive news, I'm not sure how many of you have seen this, but Mark Wilson, the president of the Florida Chamber, wanted me to be sure to share this with you. Lakeland Winter Haven MSA in their most recent survey was voted the most diverse economy in the state of Florida. So what does that mean to us in our current environment? A diverse economy creates a sustainable cycle of economic activity where businesses feed off each other and grow larger as the economy recovers. So some sectors may be doing better and they may be able to help some of the ones that are struggling right now. And because we have such a diverse economy, we're hopeful that that'll bring ours back quicker. And thank you to Steve and everyone out there at LEDC, because this is in large part due to the great work they've done of diversifying our local economy. The main reason I wanted to talk today was to discuss the proposal that I had submitted to the commission this past weekend, actually on Friday afternoon. I think you hopefully have all received it. At our most recent board meeting, and I think this touches on some of the mayor's comments about focusing on business and also talking to Commissioner Walker's concerns about quality of life. The board of directors at the chamber would propose that the Lakeland City Commission create a Reopen Lakeland Task Force, and in an attempt to assist city officials in the development of priorities and guidelines for reopening our community and economy while maintaining that delicate balance between public health and safety. Reasoning behind this is because we're faced with unprecedented challenges by this. These impact business, community, families, and individuals in countless ways. And by doing so, we've got to be sure that we're weighing this delicate balance. And by bringing in diverse cross segments of our society, I think is the best way to be able to come back stronger, and with a vision of what we want our community to be moving forward. This task force, we see it being chaired by the mayor, and we would be willing at the chamber to work with the mayor and the city manager in terms of creating what the membership would look like, as well as different categories that would be represented. This recommendation, of course, would be brought to the full city commission, and then the proposed community categories that we've been looking at least initially, include, and you'll see them on your screen, I won't walk through them all individually, but we're wanting to be able to touch on all different segments so that we don't leave anybody out. The charge of the task force would be to review and evaluate national, state, regional guidelines regarding the reopening of our nation and economy in the wake of the pandemic, review and evaluate local data collected in response to COVID-19, identify and evaluate local priorities related to ongoing management of the pandemic and a return to more traditional life, and finally, the development of guidelines related to the responsible reopening of Lakeland's community and economy and ongoing management of COVID-19 cases. We would, of course, at this task force would serve at the pleasure of the city commission. We didn't want to put any specific dates on that because we think the focus of the task force is not so much when we should reopen everything, but the best path forward. So we've left it blank in terms of when the guidelines would be presented, and we would be able to meet as needed according to the city commission, and then be able to present the results to the general public. I think that's all I've got.
Okay, comments from commissioners. There we go.
Thank you, Kevin.
Questions or comments? Commissioner McLeod.
Well, I would just maybe kick that back to you, Mr. Mayor, since the proposal is that you would chair the task force to get your thoughts on, I like the idea. I do think a local task force can fill in some gaps where maybe as a commission, we don't have all of those perspectives or all of those resources that these groups would bring to the table, as well as being able to supplement what's coming out of the governor's office, what's coming out of Washington. But I would be curious to hear your perspective if, as the one who would chair this.
Well, first of all, I complimented Corey yesterday on the fact that I think it was good work because it's comprehensive in terms of the inclusion of the people that are recommended on it. I would be much happier if I knew what our whole timeline was like. So if I knew when we were going to be reopening and what the governor's decisions were going to be, and we had this advanced ability to know that. And the reason being is if that is going to be relatively quickly, if it is, if the governor starts to reopen the state in phasing and that starts mid-May, then we are probably going to want to be more synchronous alongside the government/county work in this. And so the one limiting fact, the good news is it lets us focus on Lakeland, and that's where our heart centers are. And if there is a delay, it helps us to propel some of the information we could provide to both the county and at state level, what we have seen locally. The hard news is that, or the downside of that is it is us versus a greater group of people. And so I just want us to be, to kind of balance that well. Corey, you have a comment on that?
I would agree. We're going to be getting more information and more data as we go along. We've been waiting for the governor's task force, and I know they are now taking public comment. So we'll see how long that process takes as well. But I agree, and I see this as being, like I said earlier, a way of visioning us forward, that we may be able to continue doing a task force in conjunction with all the other things that are happening at the state, local, and federal level. This just gives us a way as Lakeland to be able to, take control of our own destiny, and kind of, because we are a unique community, and we want to stay that way, because this is going to be a new world we're living in, and we want to just be able to make sure that all segments of our community are represented in this conversation, and that somebody doesn't get left out and feel that they were disenfranchised or something. So this is something actually I had been working on for a while. Unfortunately, I didn't have a board meeting to get it proposed and accepted earlier than this. And I can tell you, all my partners that are on the call today presenting, I can certainly see them all as participants in this as well, because they represent different sectors that need to have a voice.
Well, and it does allow us then to have some of that nimble local voice in place and in process. Commissioner Walker, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Skates, for your presentation. And I too would share the sentiments of what I've heard the mayor mention as far as time and timeliness, because if we're looking at and we don't know, only God knows, but if the governor comes out, say Wednesday, and of course with him, Friday being, I guess Thursday being D-Day, Friday being the new day, what do we do? What do we have on our hand and our plate to deal with? Certainly, I could appreciate, if we have that time to put this kind of thing into action and have the support from the various ones that you mentioned, the various persons or industries, businesses related to the opening of what we call the reopening Lakeland. I think the time is important. And my position here to say, yes, we can do it. But if it's something that we need to see happen in a matter of days, sooner than later, then it's coming upon us here as the commission to make sure we make the proper, I guess, determination, along with whatever we get handed down from the governor's office, state office, as would be, and working with the county as well. Hearing some of the comments made on that call today with the county, along with our mayor making the comments he has made, and the sheriff and the comment he has made, I think it's going to boil down to sometime maybe being a little sooner than what may come out of this, because this is going to take time to bring people together, bring them to come to the table and get it all together and start talking about whatever. And if we got the time, I value this being a very necessary situation. But if time is not there, it's going to be coming upon us to do it.
Commissioner McCarley.
I agree. I think that time is of the essence if we move quicker than what we think right now. But I also think, Corey and I talked on Friday about this a little bit too. I think that the long-term effects that we're going to see, the ripple effects that are going to come out of this crisis, it's going to take all of us collaborating and working together on the long term. So I don't see this task force as being one of those quick, like a SWAT team to handle a really quick crisis situation. I think that dialogue is going to need to continue for all of our businesses well into the future. I mean, well into summer and to fall. So I hear you, Commissioner Walker, and completely agree that it needs to be quick and nimble. But also we need to know that we have skin in the game for the long haul for this, because as much as we want to get open, and that's happening probably sooner rather than later, we still need to be reactionary or not reactionary, but forthright in thinking ahead of the curve as the time frame, thinking about Chrisanne's presentation and some of those businesses that are thinking if it lasts a couple months, it's going to take them 6 months to a year. We're really going to have to dialogue longer. So I commend the chamber, and thank you to all those speakers that come in so far. I haven't said a lot, I've just been taking notes, but thank you for all participating in this. And Corey, I think the task force is a great idea.
And one of the additional people that the task force represents that we don't really mention in it is the consumer. And the consumer is who funds everything in this. And the fact that we are making some more nimble decisions with respect to how we're impacting consumers and hearing locally some of the things that we need to be doing, and it gets back through the task force. That gives it even further value.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, not saying the task force is not a worthwhile situation, but just want to make sure that we, as we move forward, that whatever may become of essence, time-wise, we may have to do something now, as well as help support the creation of this task force that may, as Commissioner McCauley alluded to, deal with some matters down the road, some months down ahead of us. So I want to make sure that I had that distinction, because it could be very well mean meeting to make some decisions here in a matter of 3 to 5 days, or 5 to 7 days, and they of course will come along and support businesses and the like for what the rippling effect would be months down the road.
And by the way, I'm willing to let someone else chair it if they'd like, and if there's a commissioner that would prefer it. Seriously, I'm not saying that as a deferral. If somebody has a passion and says, I'd like to do this one, I can do that too. So I'm usable in whatever capacity if we move forward on this you'd like me to be. Any other comments from commissioners? All right, then I think that takes us to our final presenter. Mr. Scruggs, I think you have and Corey, thank you very much, by the way, for that. I think you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and commissioners and all the people that represent business in the community. It's fun to hear from you. Really enjoyed hearing just the surveys and what's going on in the community. So yes, I want to talk to you about three things. And first, I'd just like to say we are not all in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm. And it's not the health or our economy, it's health and the economy. So just want to throw those things out there. I'd like to give you a quick update on industry sectors. We ran one of these a few weeks ago and called all 135 of our members. We've done that again and thought you might want to know what's going on briefly with those industry sectors, but that's not going to be really the main focus today. We also have done a second video. 65,000 people saw the first one we did. You're going to get to see the second one today in about 5 minutes. But I'd like to spend the last 7 or 8 minutes talking to you about a project we've been working on that's a little more inspirational called The Other Side. So that's what we hope to accomplish here in the next, Tony said I had 15 minutes. We'll see how we do. So everybody hear me okay? We're good to go? Great. So our office users have been working from home now for a month. The majority of them are still remote, and they made the transition smoothly and quickly. They do have reopening concerns, and those would be how many employees will they be allowed to have in their space at one time? Will employers be required to provide PPE for employees, and will they have access to these supplies? And the last one would be these concerns will most likely influence employers to keep their employees at home until these questions can be satisfactorily answered and dealt with. So that's kind of from our office users, our big, large office users. From a financial institution perspective, the SBA loans, several of our financial institution members have been SBA approved lenders for years, but others have recently been approved for the first time. They're working around the clock to process loan documents from phase 1 or were. They're also working on applications that have been submitted for phase 2. One institution reported that they processed over 400 applications during phase 1 with a median loan advance of $85,000. These institutions have not received official guidance on documentation that will need to be provided by recipients with regards to loan forgiveness. So we don't have that yet. We don't really know what that looks like. And overall, our institutions have been overwhelmed by the request to help, provide assistance, and process applications and loans. That's what we're hearing from our financial institutions. From a healthcare standpoint, none of this is really new, so I'll just go over it quick. The elective surgeries that you heard from the Watson Clinic is just a huge loss, not just for them, but if there's 600,000 a week, can you imagine what the overall impact is in the community? From an employment standpoint, it's kind of weird. There's some healthcare workers that are working overtime and overwhelmed, and there's others that have been furloughed. There's no one size fits all. Lakeland Regional Health continues to work closely with local manufacturers for PPE supplies, and someday, hopefully, we'll be able to tell you that story, but it's been inspirational. From a manufacturing and distribution standpoint, any company tied to grocery retailers are extremely busy and having a hard time keeping up with demand, and we have a lot of those in Lakeland. A number of local companies involved in manufacturing have pivoted to making hand sanitizers, masks, shields, and supplies for those end products. Other manufacturers have seen a decrease in demand, and it's affecting their business. From a distribution standpoint, most of our distribution companies supply consumer goods in the Lakeland area, and they're all extremely busy. Some of the food and retail companies are expanding, even because of COVID-19. And then our e-commerce business, of course, is booming. And we believe this sector will grow even faster as a result of the crisis. From a utility standpoint, the electric utilities are lowering rates around the states. LE has lowered its rates by drawing down on its fuel reserve fund, appropriately, I believe. On the gas side, TECO Peoples Gas today is holding firm from their conversation with us. They anticipate less usage, but haven't seen it yet. They have discontinued disconnection of service indefinitely for non-essential businesses, and gas and electric service and generation construction projects will continue as they are deemed essential. From a cable and internet, which I think is the most interesting one that I think people want to hear about, since March 1st, national download peak internet usage is up 18%. So for those that might not know, the download would be like streaming services. On the upload peak usage, it's up by 35%, and that's what we're doing right here, Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebEx. So significant. Netflix and YouTube have intentionally downgraded their broadcasts due to high demand for their services. So if you're at home watching tonight and you notice it's grainier or it's slowing down or whatever, that's not Spectrum or that's these companies have intentionally done that so they can serve more people. That's kind of it for utilities. On real estate developers, the demand for first quarter the numbers were very strong. Our current economic development deals we still have in the works. We really haven't had anybody drop out. There's a large demand for short-term space, especially for medical, manufacturing, and distribution. And then our existing industry users are looking for space, but new deal flow is starting to slow down. From a hospitality standpoint, this is where it gets really rough. The hotels, most are reporting 20% occupancy or less. The best we've heard is 50% range, really from one. Some are closed. Initial indications were that healthcare workers may need these facilities, but that has not materialized to date. Entrepreneurs, a large number of our entrepreneurs have been hit hard. It really depends on what industry they serve. So if you're in event planning or catering or restaurants or retail, or you're a professional speaker, a coach, you're running at 10 to 20% of capacity. But if you're into software, medical, transportation, product, packaging, and marketing, these entrepreneurs have been most have been minimally impacted. From a government standpoint, you heard Corey say earlier, 13,000 unemployment claims in Polk County between March 18th and April 18th. Most city and county employees that can work from home are working from home, and planning for reopening and what that might look like for Lakeland Polk moving forward is obviously the big question that we're looking for from the government. From a construction standpoint, to wrap it up, labor spotty on some projects. Not all employees are showing up on the job every day. I'm down here, I'm at Catapult today, and sometimes you have 5 electricians show up and sometimes 1. Most architects, engineers, and contractors have significant backlogs, which is allowing them to weather the storm longer than most people. And it's just the nature of the industry. And then all major construction projects in Lakeland are still active. So I just thought maybe that little 5-minute overview would be helpful to kind of give you, again, that's representative of about 130 calls we made over the last 3 or 4 days to our members.
Excellent.
So with that, I'm going to try to show you a video. And before I do that, I just say that many of you have seen the inspirational video produced by local creatives, Andy McIntyre, Aaron Marsh, Nate Fleming, and Kevin O'Brien, called The Light. To date, it's received over 65,000 views. But more importantly, it touched Lakeland's heart in a time when we needed it. Today, we're excited to release The Light Part 2, which focuses on the major projects under construction in Lakeland. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's see if I can share screen. Here we go. Share. Are we there?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, let's see if we can do it.
In Lakeland, even in the eye of the storm, there's growth. Don't be discouraged. The light is coming. It's coming to feed our community. It's coming to provide coverage and protection for our families. It's coming to construct speculative buildings for new industry. It's coming to deliver essential goods to our doorsteps. It's coming to innovate for our future. It's coming to ensure our time at home is comfortable. It's coming to launch entrepreneurs. It's coming to expand our downtown. Lakeland is building 4 million square feet, investing $320 million in capital investment, creating 2,000 new jobs. Lakeland's light will continue to shine.
That was awesome.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That'll be going out on social media after this meeting, and hopefully it'll inspire some people. The last one certainly did. So I'm glad that worked out. I was really nervous about that, and I think it worked. So that's good. So the last 7 or 8 minutes. Yes, Philip.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Scruggs, and thank you for wearing the white goatee that we all need to, share. That showing our maturity here.
Just following in your footsteps, Commissioner. Just following in your footsteps.
Looks well on you. Looks well on you. In your report, and I hope I didn't cut anything off. If you were trying to wrap up, because maybe I should wait and ask this question. But certainly it appears, from what I hear you saying, that from all probability, things are somewhat still, I guess, moving forward. And for lack of better words, moving forward, maybe some slower pace has occurred in our larger business operations. But still things as you showed, especially in the video, which is very nicely done, and should, even give the viewers that watch it, hope. And that's what I think it says, a message of hope that, even though we're in this and going through a tunnel, there is some light at the end of it. And I think it very well, picks that up, depicts that especially so. But again, you say that major industry, even maybe at a slower pace, we're still seeing, action, seeing progression, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. And so obviously companies like Publix and Amazon and just these big companies, their business is actually getting increasing during this time. And we have a lot of those kind of companies here, or whether it's Mission Foods or Pepperidge Farm or Buttercrust Bakery, all these food related companies are having, they're on overtime. They are adding employees. So there is some good news. I don't want to discount how devastating it is to small business and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. We all know that. I just thought it'd be important to have some light there for people to realize that there's still a lot of projects happening. There's still a lot of good things going on, and it can be encouraging. Mayor Mutz, I did actually have another part of the presentation I wanted to give.
Please continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. The last part that we've been working on, and we've alluded to it on social media, is something that we've been working on called The Other Side. And I thought it might be encouraging to you that we're thinking about what's next and not just dwelling on the darkness that we're in. So I'm going to go through 3 categories, and I could share the screen, but basically bottom line is we're going to talk about economic development, talent recruitment and retention, and migration patterns. So from an economic development standpoint, when we experience a crisis like COVID-19, it does remind us, like Corey said, about how important it is to have a diversified economy. And I did not know Lakeland Winter Haven was the most diverse in the whole state of Florida of 67 counties. But we can't rely on one or two industries like we did in the past. When I first came here, it was citrus and phosphate, and that was it. We also can't rely on our government to save us. And I want to say that publicly. I'm thankful to be living in Lakeland today. What's it going to look like for New York City to recover from a healthcare loss of life perspective? You know, closer to home, what's it going to look like for Orlando to recover from a tourism perspective? I can't even imagine what it's going to look like over there. So I'm just glad we do have a diversified economy, and we have quite a few recession-proof industries here as well. The following is a list of questions we've been asking ourselves as part of a project we call The Other Side. The answers to these questions will become the roadmap we will use for our future economic development plan that we hope all of you will participate in. So the first question we asked ourselves is, how might we capitalize on new economic development trends on the other side? So from an e-commerce and manufacturing standpoint, these industries are literally making and supplying many of the products that everyone in this country so desperately needs. So the questions we're asking ourselves are, how might we help our local companies in these industries expand? How might we recruit additional companies in these sectors to Lakeland? In October, you had the foresight to approve an annual fund of $500,000 to primarily incent manufacturing jobs. These are exactly the types of companies and jobs we need to attract to or incent to expand in Lakeland. How might we consider implementing this incentive and even considering double downing on it if needed? You also approved a one-time $2 million in incentives to catalyst projects in downtown Lakeland. I would recommend let's hold that money for 6 months as we reevaluate our priorities. We understand priorities are going to change. So let's not make big decisions here. We would recommend holding if needed for something else. Healthcare. COVID-19 has revealed how vulnerable the U.S. healthcare industry is. How might we in Lakeland capitalize on our country's pressure to relocate medical manufacturing, equipment, packaging, distribution, and even pharmaceutical production from overseas to the United States? From an office user perspective or service providers and professional services, COVID-19 is teaching us that many of us can work from home at least part-time. So prior to COVID-19, less than 4% of our U.S. workforce worked from home half-time or more. The longer people work at home during the crisis, the greater rate of adoption in the future. Prior to the crisis, surveys showed 80% of employees wanted to work from home at least some of the time, and yet 4% were. People are getting used to virtual tools. They're learning to collaborate online. But by not commuting to work, employees are saving money, time, and are less stressed, unless they've got 4 kids at home, probably, I don't know. Okay, you're listening, I got some laughs. Employees at home are closer to their loved ones and have less workplace interruptions, but maybe not personal. Companies could save money by not having to provide office space for employees. Thanks, Larry, I appreciate that. Small business and entrepreneurs, what does this mean to be locally owned small business on the other side? What does it look like? And it was great to hear from from Julie and Chris Ann and Larry and Corey, because they really represent small business more than we do. But a 2018 Federal Reserve survey showed only a slight majority of small businesses were profitable, 57%, and just under 1/4 of them were operating at a loss. What will these numbers look like post-COVID-19? Will it be, how might restaurants survive with forced lower occupancy rates due to social distancing? So just like we said, even when we open up, are they going to be able to open up 100%? I don't think they will. Will it be harder for small businesses to get bank loans when theoretically small businesses will actually need more capital? They're going to need more, not less. How might small businesses become essential so that they can stay open, compete with the big boxes who are essential in times of crisis? And could we create an incentive for local non-essential small businesses, making Lakeland more competitive and business friendly? Just an idea to think about. From a tourism standpoint, and I'll end with this one because it's really not my thing, but what is the future of tourism, large sporting events and convention centers, arenas and rideshare companies post-COVID-19? Conventions. COVID-19 will cause companies and their executives to rethink the need for travel to meetings and conferences. What will this mean for local venues and convention properties? Arenas. Our local arenas struggled for years to compete with neighboring facilities. How will we be able to compete moving forward? So those are just some economic development kind of questions that we've been asking ourselves. From a talent recruitment and retention perspective, our question is, how might we capitalize on new workforce trends on the other side? So just college students, just think of college students. Their majors. Will the college students in the future change majors based on their ability to get a job in their field? Are Lakeland colleges and universities offering the majors and minors of the future job markets? Healthcare. Will current college students be inspired to serve on the front lines in healthcare, just like some were inspired to serve in the military after 9/11? Is this an opportunity for our local colleges and universities? Can they be first to market with online healthcare programming? Working from home. Will college graduates favor companies that offer the option of working from home? Will companies hiring the brightest and best capitalize on this new trend? Will Lakeland companies adapt quickly and lead? It might give us a chance to be first to market. How about summer jobs and internships? Tens of thousands of students will not be offered internships or jobs this summer. Companies that find a way to offer internships and jobs to recent college graduates, they'll have a unique opportunity to hire the best and the brightest. The city of Lakeland's been great at hiring interns in the summer. Don't stop. Now's the time to double down on it. You'll get the best ones that are available in the country. From an essential and non-essential, these next two are really interesting, and we really should think about this. Non-essential, like theaters, gyms, salons, spas, shopping malls, sporting and concert venues, many small businesses, restaurants, bars, most nonprofits. Essentials are healthcare, grocery stores, contractors, accounting, manufacturing, etc. Will there be an advantage to being an essential or non-essential business on the other side? I say yes, there will be. How is our workforce going to respond to being labeled non-essential? How is this going to affect talent recruitment and retention? How about furloughed? How's our workforce going to respond to being furloughed? Are companies that furlough their employees going to be less attractive places to work on the other side? Do you think furloughed employees are going to consider taking a job with an essential business hiring today versus a non-essential that may or may not bring them back tomorrow? How about automation? We've heard a lot about that. Some view automation as a job killer. We see automation as a mandatory capability to deal with a crisis like this. Automation can produce high-paid jobs. There will be no need for workforce who can, there will be a need for a workforce who can operate, repair, manage this technology. So will COVID-19 drive companies to automate more rapidly? Absolutely, it will. Many companies in Lakeland have significantly invested in automation, including general manufacturing, specialty manufacturing, packaging and shipping, finance, distribution, agriculture, and healthcare, which have given them the opportunity to serve the immediate critical needs and even create new verticals here in Lakeland, which you'll hear about. There are quite a few companies here that have created new verticals because of the crisis. So to end up, I just would like to talk about something you don't hear LADC talk about very often, and that's migration patterns post-COVID-19. So how might we capitalize on changes in migration patterns on the other side? Will states, counties, and cities that experience low levels of infection become the most attractive communities to relocate to the other side? Are you hearing what I'm saying? Will those places that don't have a lot of infection be the places people want to move to? Tens of thousands of residents from the Northeast have already demonstrated during the crisis that Florida is the place they run to escape places like New York. In addition to New York, what other states are experiencing high levels of cases? Go on your what is it called? Worldometer that everybody checks. You know who those are? It's New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, Pennsylvania, California, Michigan. They're all ahead of Florida. Those are the places that people from those places are going to move to Florida. They're going to move, some of them. What cities are experiencing the high levels of cases on the East Coast? New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Miami. Are those cities we should be targeting? How would this migration pattern impact residential growth in Florida, and more specifically, Lakeland? Retirement age adults that are high risk when it comes to viruses like COVID-19 Will Lakeland experience an even greater influx of retirees than in the past? Will working age populations with children who may want to move to real or perceived safer places to raise their children? This happened after 9/11. What will happen after COVID-19? And if so, is this an opportunity for us to recruit skilled labor into our market? Mayor Mutz and I have a good friend whose children have been good friends of ours. They watched the towers fall from New Jersey. The next day they packed up and moved here, and one's a nurse and one's a teacher. Those are great skilled people that came to our market, and they've been here 20 years now. Millennials may decide to find essential jobs and companies that didn't furlough their employees where they grew up, near their loved ones. Is this an opportunity for Lakeland to experience a boomerang of millennials who grew up in Lakeland? And should we be marketing that? And then how would this migration pattern impact economic development in Florida and more specifically to Lakeland? Lakeland may have the opportunity to attract skilled labor and talent from impacted areas, and Lakeland may have the opportunity to attract essential employers that want to find a place they can operate their business without interruptions that's safe for their employees. So with that, I'm done. I'm going to send you each here in 2 seconds a one-sheeter that has these how might we's on it. And I think what might be helpful to you is, as you're thinking about what it looks like for the city on the other side, which ones of these apply to you as you're moving forward? And I just thought it'd be helpful for the conversation.
Great.
So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, comments? Those are great questions. Commissioner Madden, I don't want you to be quiet down there. I'm looking at you on my screen. Any comments on anything so far? Because you were our catalyst for this.
Well, I didn't want to take any time. I'm celebrating the stories that we're hearing today and the business leaders who are communicating those stories from the surveys and their phone calls. And I just appreciate every single one of you coming, because each of you represents hundreds, if not thousands, of our businesses throughout the city. And so, certainly I defer to all of them today, because they're the ones. I mean, we might say that our healthcare workers and first responders are the heroes, but honestly, the small business owners and the people who employ people and make jobs happen so that we all have a livelihood are my heroes too. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you very, very much. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Scruggs? All right. Any comments from commissioners overall with respect to this process? Commissioner Franklin. I thought I saw you going for your mouse. No? Okay. All right. Any comments then outside of that for the whole that you want to share? I think this has been a very, very productive time. A quick recap that's not necessary, but I'll just make it anyway, is that we've heard the urgency. We recognize that we have a balance in this. We know we are somewhat subject to the state and county in that process, and we are desiring to align. I hope the things that I said in the opening statement weren't too presumptive and kind of capture where we're coming from as a whole, as a group. If not, I would certainly want to know the things that you would disagree with. Commissioner Madden.
I will comment on that. So now that everyone has been able to have their chance to share, I just want to thank you for clarifying some things today. I did have a lot of people who were concerned with the video and even the letter that was sent to the governor, thinking that we had to wait for a downward trajectory of cases before we considered a reopen, even if the governor went forward with the phasing that the president has suggested. And that caused a lot of concern. I think really people were now then thinking about, their American freedoms and whether or not, this lockdown was a bait and switch. from an initial 15 days to slow the spread to another 30 days to then months on end. And that would dispirit them more than they could probably handle, to hear that we had to go to either 0 cases or a 14-day downward trajectory on case numbers alone, knowing that we're going to be testing more. We might have more numbers before we have less.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a more desperate position, knowing that the initial slow the spread was to prepare our healthcare. And so today I really am so grateful to hear from the business owners, and I want them to continue with the grit and determination and perseverance that I know they each have. If you're in business long at all, you have to have those attributes to stay afloat and survive. But I also want them to take heart that we hear them, we see them, we understand the pain that they're going through, and not that we have, the answer as far as government money is going to solve the problem, but that we want to respond as quickly and nimbly as possible to get this thing back on track. And knowing that, no matter when it starts, everyone mentioned some of those same things. It's going to look different. Is everyone going to be wearing masks? And is everyone going to put, tape on the ground to make sure everyone goes in the same direction and stays 6 feet apart? But I think they can't do any of those things until they're given that go ahead to start strategizing. And just like those restaurant owners and retail stores just desperately and nimbly made accommodations and adaptations at every executive order to just survive. If it was 50% capacity to groups of 100, to groups of 50, to groups of 10, to 6 feet apart, to serving on the curbside. They look now to Target and Publix and Walmart and say, why is it?
You clicked off just a second, or is that just me?
Commissioner, we've lost your video.
Commissioner Madden, you stop. We lost your speaker, Commissioner Madden. We can't hear you. Can't hear you. Well, maybe did you
I
mute?
think her mic is out of juice. So if you take your headset off and go to your computer speaker.
Can you take your headset off, Commissioner Madden, and go to your computer speaker?
Yeah, I think it's actually,
there it is.
Perfect.
okay. I think it's actually my internet right now. Sorry, it's been doing that throughout. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, then that's why some of these presentations make less sense than others.
Right. So anyway, I just appreciate you kind of clarifying some of those things at the beginning.
Sure.
And then on the call today with the county, just being able to say that you were in sync with the county and the governor was really it really helped me, that we are, because I had people say, are you with the mayor on this video? And, I don't think people understand that we don't talk to each other outside meetings and we don't have time to collaborate. So, that your opening remarks helped me out a lot. And I think it will help a lot of the people who watched today.
Good. Thank you. Chrisanne.
Very quickly, I wanted to say this because Commissioner Madden was the catalyst for this meeting, as well as some actions that our members are taking as far as getting those stories told. So along with the email that I'm going to send you with the attachment, I'm going to share a link with a playlist that's going to continue to grow. Great. Several of our members are interviewing other members and talking specifically about what guidelines and precautions they plan to take when phase 1 starts and phase 2 and so on. So I wanted to really allow the businesses to have the opportunity to talk about opening responsibly and not just opening haphazardly without consideration for health. So that is going to be a link that I encourage you all to share, because those stories are gold. And it was Stephanie who really encouraged us to start telling those stories. So thank you, Commissioner Madden, and for everyone for allowing us to have a voice here on this meeting today.
And I think I sensed a sentiment that we do want to do this Reopen Lakeland Task Force proposal that the chamber is proposing. Correct. Is that true? Everybody in? And so I think, Corey, that's your head nods that we can, that you need to accelerate this to the extent possible.
I've been texting Tony as we speak, and we'll get with him to start putting lists together. And please, anybody on this call or anybody watching, send me some names if you can think of someone that appropriately represents a certain segment that needs to be involved.
You bet. All right. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Franklin.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to also echo Commissioner Madden's comments. I appreciate the clarification that we were all getting a lot of incoming rounds about where we stood and what's Lakeland doing. Are we trying to tell the governor and the county and everybody what to do? But I like the clarification that we're not doing anything to try to put the brakes on what other organizations out there are doing. That just we need to be doing them in concert with one another. I missed the first few minutes of the county brief today at noon, and it may have been covered there, but I thought I understood. I've heard a comment that the county's planning on reopening their park facilities on the 1st. Is that Tony? Some? Then a question I have, Tony, from some of your remarks at the very beginning, that we would we're going to be looking at bringing city staff back, and that we would be hoping to open facilities by mid to late May. Which facilities are you referring to there?
Well, what the county's taking a look at now, and what all the cities are taking a look at and discussing, we're talking about the facilities that were closed, such as City Hall and lobbyways and those type of facilities. What the county is moving toward, and I know some of you were on the call, and the conversations we had in the city manager, county manager conference calls, they're hoping to move toward opening passive parks and recreation areas as soon as May 1st. Obviously, they were hoping to hear something from the governor today, and that hasn't happened. But even with that, those recreational areas they still fall under the relaxed recreation components of the first Safer at Home renderings that the governor provided. So they're looking at moving toward opening those May 1st. When I talk about passive, those are areas like trails, boat ramps, areas that can be managed without having staff physically located there to manage them, other than cutting grass and doing those type of things. They're looking at trying to move toward the middle of May to open facilities similar to what I brought up, and possibly even community centers and those type of things that don't have a pure overall class recreation component where people are going to have to gather in more than 10. And they're looking at trying to do that sometime in the middle of May. So the question, obviously, that probably from a staff perspective that needs to be posed to you as the policymakers is your thoughts on mirroring that passive park movement. Probably needs to be discussed by you all.
That's what I was thinking. And given that we meet weekly now, unless we call another special meeting, I think we should look at right now going ahead and being prepared to be in line with the county and having those passive facilities open on Friday. And I would make that motion.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second to that motion? A second from Commissioner McCarley. All right, Commissioner Walker.
Well, thank you for this particular part of the conversation, because I was waiting for this time to come. And I would have to agree with Commissioner Franklin, because I know in a hearing, what we've heard and been hearing about mental health and making sure that we can make sure that we provide a quality of life that would be, I think more than just, shutting down everything as we've done, but also be able to help support how can we bring people back out again and take care of their physical body and, provide some kind of exercise or getting out and doing some things as walking or jogging along our trails that we have. But I think it's important we look at those that we think we will provide support around the city. So are we going to do them all? Is a question I would have to ask of my colleagues. Are we going to just do a portion of them around the city to make sure that we can have every somewhat representation across the spectrum of our city? And I certainly would want to make sure that, as I've heard, I guess, a number of you all comment, that as we move along and align ourselves with what the county is doing, that we can do some of these things as well. I'm not prepared at this point, and I don't think we are. I don't think it was been shared that we open up the parks where you got people playing basketball and soccer and those kind of things. But certainly, if we can provide some kind of exercise or getting out and walking, jogging, those kind of experiences to bring about some physical interaction with themselves and people are exercising at best. I could go for that.
Commissioner McCarley.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I had to take my earbuds out. Sorry, using my computer.
That's great.
I concur. I think that we should look at the passive trails or that don't need oversight by the staff. And just a point of clarification for the community at large, and a kind of a reminder is, as far as what we have and have not closed as a city commission are the parks and rec areas. We don't have the purview to open up business or do anything like that. We can be supportive and send a letter to the governor and explain what our stance is on supporting them in the county. But I just wanted a little point of clarification for that. So the only thing that we have done so far is limit parks and trail access. So I would be on the same page that as the county is doing passive parks or the trails, so like maybe opening back Munn Park and then all of the walking trails that we have available, I would be limited on courts and on playground equipment just for right now, because I think that encourages, bigger gatherings of people. But I concur with everybody. That's why I wanted to second the motion of Commissioner Franklin, that this might be a good step in the direction. And I'm open. I had emailed staff earlier today to find out how long our turnaround time would be on that. So I'm open to either May 1st, which is Friday, or even Monday, May 4th. So by next Monday. And then maybe we'd know more from the governor and the county commission at that point.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I had a one-on-one with Tony today, and I can check. They thought that this coming Wednesday we would be finished with the resurfacing of Lake Hollingsworth Trail per se. Of course, I had mentioned that next week at our meeting I was going to make a motion that we open it back up after the trail was resurfaced. Providing there's no parking on the street and we go one way, maybe clockwise or something of that nature. And I don't know if we want to pursue that today, but I understand it's going to be completed perhaps on Wednesday. And they were doing it yesterday. But I look forward to opening the trail back up and giving our citizens some reprieve from their place to jog and walk at their leisure.
Mr. Delgado.
Yeah, and we can definitely meet that timeline of May 1st. May 4th just gives us a little more time if necessary, but I would like to provide you a staff recommendation, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor and Commission.
Perfect.
Okay. Staff has been looking at this obviously for about a week since we've been having conversations regarding what the governor might be providing and obviously what our partners throughout the county are looking at. We're proposing that we open up the trails and the boardwalks, open parks that can be open, understanding that we would maintain the closure of all basketball courts, athletic fields, those type of things that we can't control social distancing at. The conversations on opening the boat ramps, because obviously there are a lot of boat ramps that are being opened throughout the county. People are maintaining some social distancing. That might be something you would consider. Hollis Garden would be another place that could be considered, and obviously that would have to be managed by our staff, but the staff's already there and they're already managing Hollis Garden. Seven Wetlands Park, in conjunction with what the county might be doing, because we're tied to the county at Seven Wetlands Park. So if they open Loyce Park and the Lakeland Highland Scrub, we would ask that we can open that. The area that probably, the two areas that probably need to be maintained and closed, obviously are playgrounds and pavilions, as well as the athletic parks, because of the tie to the social distancing. At least close them and keep them closed for a period of time until we understand how we can open those safely. And then finally, two more areas that really need to be a point of discussion, and those being tennis courts and the golf course, because we've heard much from the community, and you've heard much from the community about the ability to social distance on those two recreation entities. But that would be our proposal, wanting to get more information about the tennis courts and the golf course. And then we would continue to maintain all closures of recreation facilities until the time comes that you feel that it's safe to go ahead and do so.
Munn Park, can you comment on that?
Well, Munn Park would be, because it's a park and it has a trail in it, we consider Munn Park a trail. We consider Lake Mirror a trail, Lake Hollingsworth a trail, Lake Morton a trail. We would ask that those also be considered to be reopened.
Just watching Julie's face exercise is all the process of that.
Not sure we would put any furniture out there, but that doesn't say
Yes,
people
sir.
can't.
Yes, sir. I think probably we wouldn't want to put any furniture out there.
Exactly.
Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tony, Mr. Delgado, making sure if I hear you correct and I think we all want to have respect to having support for all our people and all citizens, that we will have at least somewhere around our city, some place where people can go and be able to do just what I guess Commissioner Franklin, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Collins, now myself, and probably I'm sure Commissioner Madden, who's been on this particular way for a number of weeks now, someplace where they can go and exercise, walk, or jog. I don't have to worry about trying to get down to the south side of town. They want to worry about getting to the west side of town. There's a place where people can go around the city.
So Simpson Park, you're talking about in terms of.
I didn't mention the name. You did.
No, but that would be what I'm saying. That would be Commissioner Walker. Absolutely, that would be one of the parks we take a look at. Obviously, we'd keep the buildings closed and the basketball courts closed and those type of things. But people walk around the park.
We talk about Adair Park. Excuse me, not Adair Park. Dobson Park. Adair been gone. Dobbins Park and Douglas Cook Park. They'll all have trails that you can walk around. So that's where I am, making sure we get everybody who's around the city can get out.
So for clarification purposes, we're talking about the passive parks that are that don't include the Heights and don't include tennis as of Friday, May 1st. In that motion, Commissioner Franklin, I'm asking you the question.
Before Commissioner makes that motion, I've just been notified the earliest we can open Hollingsworth would be Saturday.
Okay, the second on Hollingsworth. Commissioner Franklin, go ahead.
So, Mayor, in light of Tony's request for further guidance, I'd be willing to test the temperature of the body here, and considering that the USGA has never said that golf was a bad thing, and also considering that the U.S. Tennis Association just, I think over the last few days, released a whole new set of guidelines that they say are safe means by which to play tennis, I would be willing to implement those as well and reopen the Heights and our tennis courts, considering that, especially in the case of golf, we're one of the only closed golf courses in all of Polk County. And we continue to hear about that.
And the date?
So I would defer to city on. I would say as soon as we could practically do it after the 1st. Well, actually, no. I'd say considering those are already being reopened all over the place, I would say whenever the city can make that happen.
So you might defer Hollingsworth to the 2nd if that were the case, but otherwise, Commissioner McCarley, is that in sync with your 2nd? Okay. Yes. All right.
So questions. I think Commissioner Reed's hand was up, sir.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Reed, go ahead. Oh no, he was seconding.
Oh, sorry.
He was seconding. Any other discussion by commissioners? Commissioner McLeod.
Just echoing what colleagues have said, I think this makes sense. I think the staff recommendation is well thought out, giving us some time. For me, playgrounds was the only thing that I thought I still had some reservations over, just thinking of the potential for people to gather. But if you think back to the beginning of April, and just for the community to kind of go through our thought process, we were presented with what potentially was a very different picture, thankfully, than what we have now. And so I think we were all thinking, okay, we need to take the actions that are necessary, and maybe there's a little bit of overreach here. We don't know. We've never been in this situation before, but now looking at it, I think is the time to start rolling these things back and not keep these facilities closed any longer than necessary. And so I say all that to say I agree with Commissioner Franklin on the golf course and tennis courts as well. We heard a lot of discussion, and I think seen in other places, other cities and counties where social distancing can be applied there. And so if we're confident in that and can get those public spaces back open as soon as possible, then I'm definitely on board with that.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I don't know if Commissioner Franklin would want to amend his motion, but again, I would hope they wouldn't park on the street, and perhaps we could make the Hollingsworth go one way to clockwise until otherwise we discontinue our social distancing.
Tony, what is, or City Manager Delgado, what is the recommendation on that?
Well, parking on the street, that's easily done. We can put signage up, making sure no one parks on the street at any of these locations, because obviously people are going to start gathering at a lot of locations, and they'll need to use the proper parking facilities. But making sure that they go in clockwise or counterclockwise direction will require that we have additional staff in place. That might be difficult. I'm just being quite frank with you. That might be difficult if we have to have staff in place monitoring that.
Could you do would be our preference signs?
We could do signs, but without people, either monitoring or shunning people, like I did. I got caught in Publix the other day. I kind of got beat up a little bit.
I went down the wrong row. I mean, backwards.
And they let me have it. Without people doing that, it might be a little difficult. But yeah, we could all obviously put signs.
We have to learn new habits. Yes, Commissioner Reed and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you. I was referring more to parking on the grass than on the road, and that's what I was referring to. Again, when our last endeavor, they were taking up all the streets all over the grass. So I just would like to discourage that.
We can put signs up, and we can try to move in that direction, sir.
Commissioner Walker.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a good idea, Mr. Delgado, especially so. And then also making sure, I know the public will be tuning in to see what we're saying and how we're saying and when we're going to allow this to come about. As we're saying, the May 1st, and kind of a date, no later than May 2nd, if I'm hearing what we're saying here, especially with the Hollingsworth situation. But I still want to say that we need to make sure that however we put this out, people got to know there's still self-responsibility. We still got to make sure that they understand, because we don't want to have to revert and go back to doing something that would, still be a negative if we don't find our residents and those of us, because I walk all the time, as you probably know, but still making sure they know that self-responsibility is a key here. So we're doing it, and hopefully, they understand that when we did what we did several weeks back, is just out of what we thought was a better out for our citizens here at the time. Now we're here at this point where we want to make sure that we're going to do what we think is best for the overall mental health and physical health, and numbers have shown us that we can do this. So let's do it and do it. Self-responsibility being a key factor. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Yes. Mayor, before Commissioner Franklin, I'm getting a lot of messages from the team. They're ready to go. What they've asked is we attempt to open everything as much as we can by May 1st, but no later than May 4th. That'll help us with getting staff back to Cleveland Heights and a number of people, if that's the way you decide to go, because we have to bring staff back in, and that's going to be part of this.
So the motion would be as early as May 1st for these entities, or as the city can open them.
If that's amenable to you all.
Commissioner Franklin.
Yes, just one other thing, and while we do have Julie, and you had alluded there to her facial expressions, considering she works right there on Munn Park, as I was thinking through that, to me, in my mind at least, I see Munn Park as more of a gathering space than a fitness area. But I would love to hear Julie's thoughts on that, and just the likelihood of being able to police that and keep people from gathering there.
Julie.
Well, to be fair, we do see folks, who come down and they'll walk a stroller and kick a ball with the child, but the primary concern that I have is just people congregating. We have a population that thinks that Munn Park is their living room because they don't have any place to go during the day. And that's just my concern, is that we're going to see congregations of folks who have a lot of time on their hands sitting closely together. It's more of the not abiding by the 6-foot rule. People walking through Munn Park to get to one place to another, no big deal, walking because they just want to walk through downtown as part of their walk is fine. It's the the folks who are going to spend, 2-3 hours sitting in the park together is my concern. I don't know how you fix it though. If you open it, that's going to happen no matter what.
Well, we had talked also about parklets, kind of equivalents of tables out on the, you might want to, mute. Parklet equivalents of tables out on the street as restaurants might start to reopen, as we would get to another phase in this to expand some of their spaces. Would that be a pro or a con to have kept Munn Park closed if we moved in that direction? Julie, that's really a question to you.
Are you saying if we had already established parklets?
No, I'm really saying that if we were, I'm sorry, I hate to hear myself like that. If we were opening up some street area that people could have, restaurants could have tables set up on to expand some of their seating area, which might be a possibility, not on this motion, but on a later basis, as we would start to, let's take a look at if restaurants opened at a 50% capacity level, this would expand their ability to be outside. And we approved it, and we talked about closing off some streets on maybe Fridays and Saturdays to do that. Would it be a hindrance, or would it be a non-factor for Munn Park to have remained closed, in your opinion, in that regard?
I don't think that's a factor. I mean, if we want to have, Friday nights where we close South Kentucky and put tables in the streets so that we have more seating capacity with distance, I'm happy to lead that charge and do something like that if you guys will allow us to close the street. Without the tables and chairs in Munn Park, I don't see people really, using that as a place to have meals. And Munn Park, if the tables and chairs are in front of businesses, then the businesses control that space. No one controls the space in Munn Park in that sense. And so, I'm torn. I get it. I don't really want to see Munn Park closed, because anything downtown closed is not good for downtown. But I just worry that if we, are you gonna say you can walk through it, but don't congregate in any, amount of numbers or amount of time?
Thank you. City Manager Legato.
We can obviously hold off on Munn Park and bring it into round two if that's the concern of the City Commission, because we're going to have enough work to do getting the passive parks open.
Commissioner Franklin, your preference there? It's your motion.
Well, say that again. I missed that last piece.
So do you want to leave Munn Park out of the openings in your motion?
I would let's leave it open, and we'll give. I'm at a point where I'm looking to find ways to get to yes and reopening and treat people responsibly. And if people screw it up, then we'll take it away.
Okay. So Munn Park is included in that recommendation. All right.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner McCarley seconds that as well. Okay. So any further discussion? Any discussion by the audience?
Mr. Mayor, we have one caller. Let's see if they want to participate or if they're listening. Caller?
Yes, sir. My name is Paul Hatfield. I live in the Dixieland area. I applaud your opening and reopening. People need to go to work. People need to get out. People need to maintain their sanity. This cabin fever stuff is hanging in there and is getting bad. You're seeing abuse go up. You're seeing suicide go up. You're seeing a variety of things go up that is detrimental in many other ways besides just COVID-19. I know you're sensitive to that. I applaud what you're doing. Please keep on, because many small businesses, they aren't getting the PPP. They're having to go to work to get their money, and they plan for maybe 2 weeks vacation a year. Here we are, 4, 5, 6 weeks. They're hurting seriously. God bless you. Pray for you. Keep on trucking.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. Any other callers?
No, sir. That's it.
All right. And this includes, just for clarity purposes, this includes as it can be opened and scheduled. The heights.
Wait. We got callers coming online now.
Let me finish my question. Okay, is that correct? It includes the heights and tennis. Okay, and your next caller, please.
Caller, go ahead. You're on the line.
My name is John Freed. I wanted to, the caller that came on just before me really said precisely what I would also say. I applaud all of you for your courage to go ahead and begin to try to open up as many things as possible. I would like to make this one statement. The more parks and recreation that you open, the more spread out around the community the people will be able to be. The less you open, the more concentrated those particular parks will be with the number of people wanting to utilize the facilities. But again, I think you guys are working wonderfully to bring the community back to an active state in a very safe manner. Good job.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freed. And I see that smile on Commissioner Madden's face. All right.
You have another caller.
Callers? Yes, go ahead.
Caller, you're on the line.
Hello,
go ahead.
this is Mr. Hamilton. I live here in Wedgwood.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hamilton.
And I'd like to request to open the parks immediately, especially the Douglas M. Cook Park. We've invested thousands of dollars to open this park, build this park. And all the people in this area use that park as a dog walk. So it's very important to get all the parks open. All the kids are out of school. UV light is one of the best germicides to kill viruses. Get people out in the sunshine, fresh air and sunshine.
Thank you very much. That's my comment. Appreciate your comments very much. Are there any other callers?
Yes.
Caller number 8.
Caller, you're on the line. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
And state your name, please.
Yes. Yeah, Lyle Phillipson. Yeah, I'm not sure if I. Yeah. Yes. If I understood you correctly, when you open Cleveland Heights, are you going to put restrictions on them like some of the private clubs have, as far as one person to a cart, not touching the pin, distances? Yes. That will all be in there.
Yes, that's all in there. It's to follow the norms that have been done at the other clubs that have allowed golfing to stay at a 6-foot plus distance. Yes.
And one other thing that someone had mentioned, the no parking signs at the along Lake Hollingsworth.
Yes, sir.
I think they're very effective. I think that we may need a few more. I don't find them terribly intrusive the way the city has put them up at this point. But I think once we open up the trail, if we don't have more signs, people will start parking on the grass again, and it's doing nothing but doing harm to the grass. And I've had several out-of-towners make comments to me how upset. This was several weeks ago when it started, before all these other problems. Make comments to me how upset they were to see people parking along the grass of Lake Hollingsworth. It just took away from some of the attractiveness and beauty of the area.
We concur.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your call.
Bye.
Any other callers, Mr. Cook?
Yes, sir. That's it.
All right. That allows us to be able to take a vote. So this is a hand vote, correct, Mr. Davis? All those who prefer, who want this motion passed to open up by May 1st or thereafter as can be accommodated, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you all for your patience in this process, not just this commission, but the city as well. And again, I think as Commissioner McLeod pointed out, we didn't know the severity of the crisis and how it would ramp up, and we were trying to be as drastic as necessary. We don't want to concern citizens that we're relaxing too quickly either. We're going to do this in tandem, but this is a measurement of staying in tandem with the county, and that and releasing people for more exercise are our principal motivations. Any other closing comments? Is there a motion for adjournment? I see Mr. Walker and second by Commissioner McCarley. All those in favor, raise their hand. Opposed, same. We are adjourned. Thank you so much for your time and for all the contributors who helped to make this an effective meeting.